Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was Yokai High School DxD. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by FanFiction and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Trying again. The quiet groan lightly escaped from behind a curtain of blonde locks as a 16-year-old boy stared blankly at his chemistry textbook. The teacher at the front of his class drowning on in a dull monotone that caused everyone in the class to fight against the fringes of sleep. Blinking back a yawn trying to escape his mouth that would draw attention to himself, the teen turned his attention towards the window as the clouds passed across the horizon. Jaded blue eyes, once as bright as the sky, were now chipped with steel gray. Showed his overactive thought process as his mind fought with itself between slipping back into memories or refocusing on the lesson. Shaking himself from his thoughts, the youth looked back at his book for only a second before looking towards the clock hanging above the teacher's head. Seeing it was 4 minutes until the end of class, the teen started collecting his notes while quickly searched the students around him for the sleepers before the teacher noticed them. Spotting one, the teen almost wanted to laugh at who it was. Grabbing his eraser, the teen snapped his wrist, sending it into the forehead of the equally blonde boy behind him. The recently dubbed Prince of Kuo jerked awake without a sound, as was becoming a daily occurrence, as soon as he was hit. Blinking quickly to reorient himself, the boy looked up at the clock before easily tossing the eraser into open bag next to boy ahead of him. Muttering an almost silent thanks Naruto as he started packing up as well, the prince did a quick scan of the class to make sure nobody saw or heard him. The boy named Naruto shrugged while scratching his whisker-marked cheek to hide his answer, "Welcome Yudo." The second Naruto finished whispering his reply, the bell rang ending the school day, as well as waking the rest of the class. "Hey na Yudo" started only to be cut off as the mostly girl-filled class rushed a handsome young man, asking for dates and other things that couldn't be deciphered due to them all speaking at once. Snickering at his fellow blonde's cursive fangirls, Naruto silently left the room, bag in hand without anyone being the wiser to his passing, something he'd always had a talent for, even before he'd come to this school. Ever since he was found in what remained of a burnt red and black coat with what was now his name stitched inside of it, his abilities always tended to make people ask questions when they saw them. So to stop the questions he started hiding his skills and abilities as best as he could, something that came to him naturally. Boasting his way through the halls of the Kuo High School, Naruto made his way outside so he could start his way home, humph home yeah right. The boy thought to himself while he passed by the mostly girl population of the school, most barely even seeming to notice him, while he used most of the popular students to distract attention away from him. His favorite targets for the attention being the two great ladies of the third-year group. Gremory Rias and Himejima Keno. Shaking away his thought Naruto disappeared into the background, just being missed by Kibayudo, as he tried and again failed to catch his fellow blonde. Skiing quietly the blonde prince turned away from where he knew he'd lost the infamous ghost of Kuo. Yudo turned back towards the school grounds and set off to meet his club. Naruto didn't know it, but his ability to disappear whenever he wanted to had gathered some attention to him from several groups, one of which happened to be his favorite attention grabbers. Due to having several classes with a whiskered blonde boy, Yudo had managed to notice some oddities around him. While Naruto didn't stand out in any major ways, he seemed to blend into the background too well. Yudo tried to follow him several times during lunch, only to lose sight of him around a corner that was steps ahead of him, but the hall was completely empty when the princely boy rounded the bend. Politely asking others if they seen the boy only gathered negative replies and his own seemingly growing fan base. What made it harder as well as annoying for the young teen was he was sure Naruto wasn't doing it to intentionally lose him, the boy just seemed to do it out of instinct or habit. Not even his familiar, a Paragon Falcon, was able to keep track of the other second year. None of this was what truly attracted the attention to him compared to the fact that he seemed to produce no aura, which should be impossible. Anything that's alive has an aura except seemingly Naruto. What is he? A ninja? Yudo mentally groaned to himself, keeping his perfectly polite smile in place while he entered the old school building where his club mates were waiting. As Yudo opened the door, he was greeted with the sight of the rest of the occult research club. The room was a converted classroom decorated in Victoriana-style furniture, consisting of two large couches with a large stylized dark oak table set between them. At the other end, and of the table opposite the entrance, sat a large mahogany office desk filled with occult books, mythology books, and a large ever-growing pile of unfinished paperwork. Yudo barely held back his sweat drop at the last part. Quickly pushing the thought aside, he observed his co-workers of sorts. He was still adjusting to having joined them. First was a smaller white-haired girl, although 14 she looked much younger than she was and just moved up to high school first year in the new term. Though her face was blank, her golden eyes were focused intently on the cookie she was munching on. This girl was Tauju Kaneko. She wore a white and blue school uniform for the middle school nearby. At the mahogany desk sat the one of the two great ladies of Kuo High School and club president Jermarie Riaz, her long crimson hair flowing down her back, slightly pale skin making a sharp but pleasing contrast as her blue-green eyes moved from her paperwork to him with an almost relieved look to them. She wore the female version of the Kuo uniform with her double D breasts filled out quite completely. Behind her stood the other great lady and vice president Himejima Keno, her black hair, which was a good deal longer than Ria's, was held back in a high ponytail, which she pulled off better than many could. Like Ria, she was also in a Kuo uniform and her shirt straining E-cup chest filled it out. Akeno was also holding a silver serving tray under her bust, pushing it up slightly while she looked up from checking Ria's work. "Welcome back, Yudo," Ria said with a smile before it waned slightly seeing him alone. "I see you didn't catch him again." Yudo could only sigh and shake his head as he sat on the couch across from Kaneko, Akeno serving him a cup of tea as he did so. "Unfortunately not but you," Yudo said with a groan. "He managed to make it out of class while my attention was demanded by our other classmates." Riaz winced slightly as she realized that this was a hit to his pride, quickly covering the wince with a small but truly kind smile. "It's not your fault, Yudo-kun, none of us or our familiars can keep track of him." "Thank you but you." Yudo returned kindly. "However, I have 3 out of 5 classes with him, yet I still can't keep track of where he is most of the day." Seems our little ghosty-chan is living up to his title," Akeno said with a smile that was slightly covered by one of her hands. "What of our other potential guest?" "Pervert smells like tiger," Kaneko said in a monotone voice with a deadpan look. Ria sighed as she cupped her chin in her hands and stared forwards at the door. "Then we can pretty much knock Hyodo-sen off our list. If he had a more powerful gear he'd be worth trying to mesh with our group, however I can't ask you all to put up with his actions. And insults in your case, Yudo, if he wouldn't be helpful when the time came." Yudo gave a strained smile as he remembered what many of the males at the school said about him. It's one of the reasons he was hoping to get Naruto to come join him. He was the only other guy at the school that didn't talk behind anyone's back. Then again, I rarely see him talk to anyone's front either. Ria sighed and nodded to herself. "Okay, we'll just have to try and focus more of our time into trying to track Uzumaki-san. I'll see if I can talk to Sona about his records to find his address." The others nodded before Riaz looked back to Yudo with a smirk. "So what's this I hear about you missing assignments in chemistry class, Yudo-kun? You pretty boy, sweat drop." It wasn't until 3 days till summer holidays, a full 3 months of trying, that Naruto finally realized someone was trying to stop from making it out of the school. The occult research club was standing outside the gates while the student council tried to follow his movements inside the school. They were failing, but they were getting slightly better at it. As soon as he exited the doors to the school, hidden among the many students, he realized the potential problem. He knew all those that were standing ahead of the horde he was hidden in were the popular kids. The attention getters. He still had anxiety problems along with his odd case of PTSD, not that any counselors or doctors could explain his flashback in any form. His fear of being the center of attention, which sprang from nightmare of being attacked by mobs with knives and burned repeatedly, was the reason he stayed away from people. Narrowing his eyes, he slipped around the groups of people that were forming as they stared at ones blocking the gate. Quickly and silently slipping into the shadows of the trees lining the school wall, Naruto jumped the fence using a tree as a booster. Pulling his blazer and school shirt off, Naruto pulled on an orange and black t-shirt from his bag before moving with the foot traffic to make his way back to the gates and listen in. "Thank you for your time. I know you all want to be going home after finishing your test, so I'll only make my announcements brief," Shitori Sona, student council president, said loudly before continuing talking. However, Naruto ignored her and instead focused his eyes on the 2 groups of people looking through the gathered students. What really stood out to him was that, other than the searching groups, everyone seemed to be hypnotized by Sona's voice. Naruto smirked when he saw his classmate Yudo was among the group searching the students, looking intently at the blonde pretty boy. Naruto waited for him to look up. Seeming to feel he was being watched, Yudo turned from the students he was searching near to the gates. Only for his eyes to shoot open. There, standing almost directly behind the student council president, was the object of their search, smirking right at him, eyes locked and everything. Yudo could almost hear the "gotcha" at the look on his face. Noticing their blonde teammate stop, the rest of the orc followed his sight, only to gape at the scene. Naruto looked at each of them in the eye, smirk clearly visible on his whiskered face. Giving the gathered people a mocking salute, Naruto flicked a folded piece of paper towards them, which landed right next to Sona's foot, before stepping back and disappearing to the foot traffic, as if he was never there. Sighing at yet another failed recruitment attempt, which was made worse as they hadn't even gotten to talk to him yet, Yudo made his way over to the paper and picked it up to read. "Better luck catching me next term, Yudo." "Then you." Riaz looked over the note she was handed and couldn't tell if she wanted to start twitching in annoyance or smirk at the implied challenge. Looks like we have some hunting to do. Jazzing shadows. Naruto yawned as he sat up and ruffled his spiky blonde hair, the covers from his bed pooling around him as he stared blankly ahead. Trying to remember why he was awake. The sun was just starting to peek above the horizon, breaking away the night cover sky of the city. Half-lidded eyes slowly scanned the room, taking in his one-bedroom apartment that was covered by the scholarship fund he earned from school. An upgrade from the allowance that had sustained him through grade school. Wearily getting out of the futon and staggering towards the bathroom for his morning shower, any that saw the blonde-haired teen would have swore he was zombie, not a person at the moment. Let it be known that despite his almost unending stamina while awake, Uzumaki Naruto was not a morning person. After 20 minutes in the overly hot shower he returned to his room drying his hair with a large fluffy white towel. His skin only slightly pinked from the shower. School had ended 2 days ago, so he was on holidays until he started second year. As he pulled on his clothes he planned what he was going to do. Yudo and his little gang hadn't given up, which caused him to want to grin. If they continued trying but didn't catch him by school start he'd approach them. He was curious what they wanted with him, but considering the fact they had stopped the whole school inside the gates just to talk to him, he wanted to see what other lengths they'd go to. Plus this will make good training. Checking himself in the wall mirror he nodded to himself that he was just in the line between standing out in a crowd and blending into the background. His clothes for the day was a tight dark crimson shirt with a loose black coat over it, black pants that had orange flames climbing up the left leg, and matching black running shoes with flame prints on them. Hanging from his neck was the only hint of where he came from, a blue-green crystal dangling from a string. Grabbing a sports bag and cloth carrier for his bakken, the youth trekked his way from his apartment towards the local gym for his daily workout before setting off to track down his hunters. It had just rolled around to noon when Naruto spotted his pursuers. They weren't doing the best of jobs hiding themselves, however the cute little white-haired girl was disturbingly good at noticing him watching them. Every time he tried to get closer she'd start looking towards where he was coming from, as if she knew he was getting close. It was a fun little game of twisted cat and mouse they had seemed to have started. They would track his known places while he would follow them, while trying to get close but stay hidden, though he hoped they wouldn't be doing their search like this all summer, because it would get really boring very quickly if they didn't get better. This did get interesting however when he observed them do some rather odd things during a few close calls. He'd been trying to get closer to them to test the white-haired girl's perception limits, while in the market district of town, he was almost in hearing range when the winds changed direction and blow from behind him all of a sudden. The second the wind reached the group the smallest girl's nose twitched before she whipped her head towards him. Had he not been looking right at her he would have missed it, but now he knew how she was locating him. The second close call was when Naruto had started getting a bit cocky and decided he wanted to play with the girl's sense of smell and started placing himself downwind for a second before ducking into an alley or store to hide. He'd stayed out a second longer than normal to watch them and just managed to see Yudo disappear. Had he not ducked behind a dumpster in the alley behind him the princely boy would have caught him. He had to slink out of the other end and double back to find them again as to not be seen. The defining find however was when the red hair, Riaz, slipped out of view of the crowds and lifted her arms above her head. Naruto watched as there was a flash of red light before the sky turned purple and the people around them disappeared. He stayed far enough back that he wouldn't be seen, so he didn't hear what was said. However he did see them all stand on a glowing circle before disappearing with another flash. Once they were gone everything returned to normal and the blonde was left staring at the area they had just been in. Am I getting hunted by wizards? What the devil is going on? Riaz groaned tiredly as she dropped herself onto one of the couches of the orc office. The rest of her peerage following her example to varying degrees, Akeno sitting next to her with only a slight bit more restraint, Kaneko took a spot across from them snatching a cookie and starting to eat it before she even sat down. Yudo was the only one that hadn't sat down as he was pacing back and forth looking to be in deep thought. What the hell is up with that boy? Riaz questioned with her head back facing up, her eyes were closed in an attempt to relieve some of her fatigue and annoyance. He knows we're looking for him, but he is taunting us always staying a step out of reach. Two other grumbling voices agreed with her. No. Yudo suddenly said quietly, having stopped pacing and stared wide-eyed at the door. Huh? The others asked while sitting up a bit to look at the blonde swordsman. What do you mean Kiba-kun? Akeno asked, voicing the question everyone wanted to ask. I don't think he's taunting us, I've known Uzumaki long enough that it isn't his style to taunt someone. Yudo explained as he looked over the group. He's testing us for something. Just like the note said, he wants us to catch him, he just wants to know how far we'll go to get what we want from him. Riaz narrowed her eyes slightly, not out of anger or annoyance, but confusion. Why doesn't this boy make any sense? He act nothing like any of the boys I've met before. Clearing away her thoughts for now, she focused back on her night. What makes you believe that, Yudo? As I've said, I've watched Uzumaki for most of the year. I dare say I may know him best out of everyone other than himself. He shows all the symptoms of PTSD, hypervigilance, moments of unawareness, and a reluctance to be the center of attention. Taunting someone or a group would be the same as demanding their attention onto himself, something he's made an effort to avoid at every other time. Akeno tilted her head slightly. Ara. That would make sense why he wouldn't be taunting us. But you also said he wanted us to catch him, which is the opposite of what you just explained. Yudo nodded while crossing his arms. It's his eyes. Everyone looked at him confused. They're empty, like he has given up on everything. He wants us to show him that what we are after is worth him listening. Worth pushing the demons away so he can help us. He's seen that he can't connect to others easily, so why should he try again with us? That to him are just more run-of-the-mill high school students. You see yourself in his eyes, don't you? Ria said, not asked. Yudo didn't need to answer, but nodded anyway. Hi. However, unlike me, who you saved from the point of death, Uzumaki has survived whatever happened on his own. Since no one was there to help him, he's just kept moving forward on his own. He simply made himself disappear into the background to hide better and became very good at it. Yudo explained his thoughts. Akeno and Kaneko could only look down as they realized that it seemed another soon-to-be comrade at another haunted past. Akeno almost snorted that he was titled Ghost. Ria simply sighed sadly, wondering how she kept stumbling onto peerage members that had such dark and painful pasts. Looking towards her queen, who looked up and nodded, followed by looking to her rook, who also nodded. For once ignoring her cookie, Riaz gave a small sad smile as she turned to address her knight once more. So how do you suggest approaching him? Yudo smiled slightly, happy they weren't going to stop. I think we are already on the right track, as we know he knows we're looking for him. However, instead of looking in a group, we should start tracking him backwards as well as following him. Riaz nodded, look for patterns in his movements, see if there's anywhere he regulars so we can wait for him. She seemed to think deeply for a few moments. However, if your description is accurate, which I do not doubt it is, then we must not rush him either, as that would only spook him away like a wild animal. The others nodded, however Kaneko seemed to be thinking deeply about something, as her normally blank face held an almost unnoticed frown on it. Kaneko. Is something wrong? Shaking herself from her thoughts, the young white-haired girl simply shook her head. No, but you. Riaz looked on with slight worry before she let it go for now. Well, we are all tired, so let's call it a night and return to it tomorrow. Over the following weeks, the orc managed to figure out most of the places Naruto normally visited, though he didn't have a real set schedule. He randomly helped out at the orphanage, picked up trash in the park, worked out at the gym every day, and seemed to have a self-imposed duty to patrol the streets and back alleys at night. They could all agree that he was a very nice person, but again they notice all the things Yudo had pointed out. Naruto had a severe aversion to attention, to the point that more often than not, he'd do all his jobs quickly while staying in the background. They'd even seen him catch a purse thief and return the purse before the women realized she'd been robbed. Every mugging or assault attempt he stopped, he never stayed long enough to be seen by the victims, only taking out the attackers then fading away. The few times he did interact with people, he wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes, but it was one so practiced that unless you realized it was fake you'd never tell. Watching him after Yudo's comments, Riaz could even start to hear how fake his laughter sounded. Now he should get an award for how skilled he is at acting. Although they didn't get to see much of him, as he was still making a point not to get caught by them, they had started catch glimpses of the elusive boy and of his abilities that they hadn't been aware of before. He was strong, to the point of impossible for human strong. Given a running start, Kaneko had seen him jump to the roof of a two-story house. His speed didn't match up to Yudo's, but then he wasn't using any sort of energy to help him, it was pure muscle. Akeno had noted that a week ago he'd arrived at the scene of an attempted rape, something that caused the first true emotional response Akeno had seen from the youth. Rage. I don't know if it was the lighting, my own anger at the scene, but I would swear to you that Ghosty-chan's eyes were glowing red and the shadows around him were getting darker. I couldn't feel anything from high, no, I felt like nothingness from him. I don't know how else to describe it, it was like he was a void sucking in all the energy around him. Akeno explained her encounter with a shudder before another one racked through her as she blushed lightly. Then he attacked them. I didn't see him move, but the screams of pain from those men, oh my Riaz, I need to go take a shower. She had gotten her hands on the hospital records for those men, 2 of them would never walk again, or at least not without a limp. Another of them had all the bones in his right arm and hand reduced to splinters, making recovery almost impossible. However, the apparent leader of the group was the one that got the worst of Naruto's rage. His genitalia was completely torn off and his entire rib cage shattered. The man is in a coma, and if he would live through the experience was still up in the air. Yet again no one saw who did it other than Akeno, and all anyone could describe to the police was a dark shadow attacked them. Rage issue notwithstanding, Naruto showed signs of possibly having a sacred gear, as only high-level gears could give their hosts abilities without being active, however she had never heard of one that could completely hide someone from their senses. Not even tracking spells ever seemed to locate him no matter how advanced they were. I may have to call on Isama for this one. Rias thought with a wince. I'll try Graphiani first. Naruto sighed as he walked into his apartment, Bakken in hand and sweat dripping off of him. The blonde's hair was matted down across his forehead, almost straying into his eyes as he moved towards the kitchen to get a glass of water. He'd just gotten back from the park he liked to practice in when he had stumbled on one of his neighbors trying to move some new furniture. He didn't even ask as he started easily lifting the heavy stove and oak dressers up the 2 flights of stairs to their apartment. Although he always attributed it to working out a great deal, he'd always been much stronger than his peers, he also had better reflexes, hand-eye coordination, and was a natural at most martial arts. Although having a passive helpful nature, fighting always came naturally to him, which combined with his heightened strength, made him feared by the orphanage that raised him. Hence why he was in his own apartment with an allowance until he finished school, something that, although lonely, seems almost normal for him. Looking down at the necklace dangling at his chest he wished. Not for the first time to know just who and what he is. Closing his eyes Naruto focused his mind to push away thoughts of where he came from and the weird dreams of being a loud orange-obsessed apparent super ninja and the nightmares of being attacked and called demon. Sighing when he realized he was no longer tired despite having been working out for 4 hours, the teen flicked on the television while stripping of his workout clothes for a clean pair of track pants and flopped down to watch some random anime. One of the few things in his life that he honestly enjoyed. Even if it only allowed him to feel a slight amusement. Okay Tenchi, what are you going to do to piss of Ryoko today? Naruto thought as he got comfortable on his couch, a book in hand for in between shows or reruns, as he knew he wouldn't be sleeping tonight. Naruto was knocked out of his trance-like reading by his cell phone vibrating and starting to sing the opening song to Darker Than Black. Blinking, the blonde flipped the book face down on his coffee table while snagging his phone in its place. Hello? Another sleepless night? The caller asked, not even bothering to return the boy's greeting. Naruto gained a smirk while he looked for a clock, already knowing who his caller was without needing to check if the caller ID had picked it up. More often than not Uncle Oz. What can I do for you at what the hell time is it? It's 9:30. The man answered with a chuckle in his voice. As for what you can do for me, I was wondering if you'd be up for a visitor for a few weeks. Naruto's face dropped into a deadpan look. You knocked up some women and now they're hounding you for child support, didn't you? Naruto had to pull the phone away from his ear when he heard the man on the other end start howling with laughter. No, but I'll be sure to come to you if that ever does happen. The man said after getting his laughter under control. No, I have some business meetings in and around Tokyo, so I figured I'd come see how my little nephew was doing. Naruto gained a bit of a smile at the thought of company, even if it was his pervert of a would-be uncle. Speaking of women, have you got yourself a girlfriend yet? I'm not getting any younger and could use some grandnieces and nephews to spoil. Way to kill my good mood Irojiji. Naruto said with a flat voice, only getting another laugh in return. But I don't mind, when will you be here? It won't be for a few weeks still, I just remembered last time I tried to surprise you'd moved and I didn't feel like having to run all over Hell's Half-Acre looking for you. His uncle replied. You haven't moved again have you? A trace of weariness seeping into his voice. Naruto chuckled in reply, having remembered that event. No, I'm still living in Kuo, same apartment as last year. So I thank the gods, I'd hate having to look all over the place again. Naruto only chuckled more. Did you get my gift? Naruto smirked a bit as he looked back at his TV stand where the gaming console sat, set up but rarely used. Yeah, but it's not like I use it much. Oz gasped at that. What? Why not? I sent you all the newest and hot-selling games. Uncle, all the games you sent me are 2-player fighting games. So? I don't talk to people, whom am I going to play it with? Naruto deadpanned again. We'll just have to fix that. Oz replied with determination. Maybe I'll take you out to the bars, fix you up with some girls. Naruto could only shake his head while the other man continued to ramble on about doing things. I'm hanging up now uncle. Wait. What's up? Naruto, listen. Naruto stopped when he heard how serious the normally playful man sounded. I've heard from some friends that some serious stuff is happening near that area. I want you to keep your head down okay? Naruto narrowed his eyes. What kind of stuff? Stuff that's my business to clean up. Oz said. Please, I don't need you getting caught up in it, just try to keep your head down okay? Naruto groaned while he dragged his hand down his face. I really wish you'd just explain what you do to me. I will, just once you get out of college, I even have a job open for you. Just for now, hang on till then, okay? Yeah, I got it. I'll try to keep out of it. Good. Naruto could honestly hear as the man's smile turned into a smirk. And when I get there you can introduce me to all the pretty girls at your school. Goodbye Irojiji. Naruto said while simply hanging up on the man. Shaking his head with a small grin, Naruto tossed his phone on a charger before heading to the kitchen to make some breakfast. That pervert was the person who had taken over legal guardianship of him when the court started to really hound him about trying to live on his own. At first their relationship was really rough as he caught Naruto trying to pickpocket him, so the offer to help was looking on with a great deal of suspicion, but it seemed to turn slowly into an odd peer-like friendship. Naruto truly saw the man as close family, more like a caring but perverted and crazy uncle, a role the older man accepted and filled readily as he couldn't really see himself trying to be a father figure to anyone anytime soon. Seraph Azazel, the man's name, was apparently a well-to-do business owner and used his business to pay Naruto's bi-weekly allowance. At least that's what he says. Naruto thought Azazel often checked in on him but never let Naruto know just what he did for a living, only promising to tell him when he was older. Why do I always attract the weird ones? The youth muttered aloud while finishing cooking his breakfast. Yudo yawned loudly as he staggered his way towards the bathroom of his small apartment, his hair askew, dark bags under his barely aware eyes. While Yudo would not truly consider himself a morning person until this summer started, he'd never thought it could be this hard to get out of bed. That thought had changed when his club decided to recruit the slippery blonde bastard, as Yudo was now referring to him in his mind. Okay, so the princely teen was starting to get slightly sour with how easily he was being evaded. Sure, the group was getting more information about him every day, however it was becoming apparent to him they were only seeing what Naruto wanted them to see. The knight realized they were being led around after the second week. He had tried to approach the area his classmate was in while he was working at the park, but every time he was nearing the larger teen disappeared again. Try to cut him off while walk, he'd simply seem to take another route. Try waiting at one of his job sites, he wouldn't show up. Try following him afterward and he'd simply disappear like at the school. Since they had started trying to track him down, Yudo had started doing almost 3 times his normal workload, as he still did his normal amount of contract requests. However, both before they started and after he was finished, he'd spend as much time as he could trying to find and confront his fellow blonde. Sighing and then yawning again, the young swordsman pushed the thoughts from his mind and started his morning routine. 2 hours later, Yudo arrived at the Kuo's old school building that housed the orc room. As he approached the door he could hear voices speaking. Rather than disturb them, Yudo simply leaned against the doorframe and listened in. Inside the orc room, Riaz was sitting opposite her longtime friend, Citri Sona, student council president. Both of whom were staring intently at the chessboard between them. I have managed to dig up some more information on your query. Riaz looked up sharply as she heard this from the black-haired pink-eyed girl. What did you find? Pushing her glasses up while she leaned back into the chair she was sitting in, Sona looked at the excited look on Ria's face and had to hold in a sigh, knowing she was going to be slightly disappointed in the information. Not as much as you are likely hoping for, Riaz. Riaz deflated slightly for a second before looking back with determination. I still wish to hear whatever you managed to find, Sona. Getting anything on Naruto is like pulling teeth from a hydra. Sona blinked at her friend's blatant frustration over her would-be peace before shaking it off and narrowing her eyes. Reaching into her handbag, Sona retrieved a thin file folder, which she laid on the table between them next to the chessboard and started to read it out loud. Uzumaki Naruto, date of birth. Unknown. Place of birth. Unknown. Raised until the age of 8 in the Orihime orphanage outside of Aikido before being moved into an apartment on his own. The rent, food and all needed supply were paid for through an anonymous source. Grades were always just inside the top 10 percentile of his year in all courses. The odd part was he was invited into Kuo with full scholarship under Surzik's grant. However, who invited him is unknown, as is his home address, plus the only information we have for a guardian for him is a Mr. Seraph, no first name. Whom we can't find. Riaz narrowed her eyes. Well, at least we know how he ended up here. Do you have any idea why his place and date of birth are unknown? According to the orphanage files, he was found in a park after an extremely bad storm. He was found in a circle of burnt grass, wrapped in a red and black long coat with a necklace around his neck. The name he was given was found stitched into the inside collar of the coat. It also says he was tattooed on his stomach, chest and both his arms with tribal, ritualistic circle marks. Sona explained blankly. Riaz frowned at this. Not only was he tossed out of the orphanage at 8 for unknown reasons, he was abandoned at birth as well. I am aware that this only brings up more questions than answers, and I intend to continue to look, however that looks like all the records on him. Either someone was doing a very poor job keeping track of him. Or someone is making all his records disappear. Riaz finished. Neither girl said anything after that, both in deep thought over the many mysteries surrounding their blonde-haired schoolmate. Their musing was interrupted by a knock at the door as 3 other teens entered. The first 2 were members of the orc, Akeno and Yudo, the last however was here for the pink-eyed teen. Wearing a white dress shirt tied at the neckline with a dark green ribbon that formed into a large bow shape with a pleated mid-calf blue skirt, stood Vice President of the Student Council Shinra Tsubaki. Her hair was the same black as Akeno's, however she let it flow freely down her back reaching her knees. That combined with her golden-orange eyes covered with blue half-framed glasses gave her a strong, quiet and attention-getting appearance. "I hope we aren't interrupting you, but you," Akeno said politely as they all bowed respectfully to the 2 seated young women. "Not at all, Akeno, Sona and I were just finishing up. Is there something you need?" Ria said smiling to her queen. Akeno raised from her bow with a less than pleased look on her face. "Hi, but you. We just received an order from the Archduke and I believe both you and Citri-sama should look at it." As she finished saying this, the ponytailed queen held out an official-looking form towards the now concerned Reed. Looking at the notice, Riaz understood the normally smiling girl's different demeanor. Orders from the Archduke were often notices that some stray devils or rogue demons had been tracked into their territory, while not something that was a daily occurrence, they weren't terribly uncommon either. Normally such orders were elimination requests, which this one was as well. What made this order concerning was the depth of the order. The problem was that it was for a group of high C rank strays following an A rank strays lead that was heading towards her territory. The order said there were no less than 8 devils and we would be on the outskirts of the city by week's end at the latest. Passing the order to Sona, Ria started to rub her head. "I am going to need help with this one, Sona, would you and your peerage be willing to lend us assistance?" Reading through the order form, Sona's eyes widened a slight bit at what was being requested. "I see. Yes, Ria's my peerage and I will be there to assist you. When do you plan to go?" Riaz lightly tapped her lip in thought as she considered what to do. "I think Saturday night would be best, let them come and find a location, we can use our familiars to track them down before they settle in and attack while they haven't set up yet. It should allow a surprise with lowest number of human losses." Sona considered this for a moment before nodded and standing from her seat. "Very well, I will gather everyone and meet you here Saturday afternoon." "Thank you," Riaz said while she too stood to see her guest out. Sona simply nodded with a hint of a smile on her lips before both her and Tsubaki left. Seeing her friend off, Riaz let out another small sigh. This would have been easier if they had gotten Naruto to join them earlier, even if, but a little, he could have helped guard their back. "I really hope that boy is worth how annoying he is," she muttered before turning to her friends and see deadpan faces as they nodded in agreement. Blonde hair whipped in the wind as Naruto sped across rooftops as he chased his target. It had reached the weekend, and while the group had cut back on their chasing him around, they seemed more focused and agitated than he'd seen them yet. Combine that with Azazel's warning earlier in the week, and the boy was starting to get nervous. So he had decided to burn off his energy by hunting gangs in the area, or at least ones that tried to move into the area. What he found instead made him worried and upset. He had found a group of ruffian-looking elder teens that had been moving through back alleys around the city. Never one to jump to conclusions from looks alone, Naruto was content to only watch them for a couple of minutes before moving on. That thought was ended when he saw what looking to be a massive spider-like thing drop onto group of 5 and wrap them in web before moving back to the rooftop. The whole attack being done in less than 30 seconds. Shaking off the weirdness of the attack, Naruto regained his wits about him and chased after the spider thing in hopes to rescue the humans from becoming the thing's lunch. This is why he was now jumping from building to building heading towards the forested area on the outskirts of city that this part of Japan was known for. With one final massive push off of his legs, the whisker-marked teen left the town proper and landed on the branch of a tree at the edge of the forest the monster had disappeared into. Narrowing his eyes and straining his vision, Naruto kept pace as best he could. However, it didn't take him long to find where the spider had gone. Only a minute's fast run into the forest was a large mansion that looked as if it hadn't been used in 20 to 30 years. Windows were either boarded over or broken, paint was peeling off the grayed and weathered walls. The large iron fence that had surrounded the yard was rusted to the point that it was visibly falling apart. What stopped Naruto from rushing in to follow his target was the grounds inside the fenced-in area. The tall grass was padded down in paths showing signs of a great deal of movement recently. Signs that couldn't have been made by something that left a footmark that would have been less than an inch diameter. Deciding to do the smart thing, the youth moved swiftly to the side of the building. Jumping up to the second story, he pulled himself through one of the broken windows. Staying low and flitting from shadow to shadow, Naruto stayed hidden while he made his way around. Every room was littered with broken furniture, garbage and dirty blankets. Showing that this abandoned building housed homeless vagrants before the spider. And whoever came with her, moved in. Creeping his way through the house, Naruto took extra care to make as little noise as possible. His stealth may be one of his strong points, but as he learned from the white-haired friend of Yudo, sight wasn't the only way to find someone. Staying as low as he could when he arrived at the entrance hall, Naruto spotted his target right away. Now that he was closer, he got a better look at the monster. While he was correct in his assessment of its relation with spiders, only the lower part of the body was like that. The upper body was a female humanoid torso. She had long shiny black hair that reached to her black widow-shaped arachnid half. The hair wasn't smooth, looking like one would think though, as what looked to be small barbs were sticking out of it randomly. He couldn't make out her face as she looked to be spitting out more webbing, cocooning the last of her victims. All 5 were dangling from the ceiling. Down on the main floor underneath the dangling cocoons and spider women was another grouping of 4 more monsters. At least that's how Naruto classified them in his head. 2 were matching set of massive thick snake-like beings with large swooping horns that reached down almost 5 feet past their 3 feet long heads. Their scaled skin was a light sandy brown in color and seemed to have some sort of gleam to them. Their stomachs were swollen from a just finished meal. Sarasters, if I remember my Greek mythology correctly. He thought to himself. The 2 seemed to be arguing with each other in Latin. Naruto only knew what language it was because he was attempting to learn it. The thing. For that's all Naruto could describe it as, looked like a horrible amalgamation of an orangutan with 2 heads, clawed lizard feet, scaled octopus tentacles for arms, and it stood close to 9 feet high. Its fur was caked with so much blood it was impossible to tell what color it was. The only one who stood out from the rest was a shy-looking young half-snake girl with light purple shoulder-length messy hair. She looked to be around 12 years of age if she had been fully human. What set her apart from the rest was the scared, disgusted look she was giving the others around her, while being sure to keep herself away from the blood that covered the ground around her. She stayed huddled in a corner of the room by the main entrance, keeping her body mostly covered with a dirty old blanket she must have gotten from a likely now dead homeless person. Getting ready to attack the obvious human eaters, the stealthy blonde reached inside his coat and pulled out a set of metal-plated gloves. While he did train with swords as well as unarmed fighting, he had never needed a real weapon before. At the look of this group, he was really regretting not having one now. Gloves tightened into place, Naruto moved towards the banister just as the spider women landed with the other 3 man-eaters. When the front door was blasted open with a strong jet of water. The door crashed into a broken table, only just stopping it from crushing the young snake girl that was hiding near it. All movement inside the building stopped as every living being that was able turned to stare in wide-eyed shock as a group of 4 teenage girls, dressed in their Kuo school uniforms, boldly walked into the room. Stray devils, we, of House Gremory and House Citri, have orders from the Archduke that you are all to be eliminated. Ria stated loudly, stepping ahead of the group, an aura of dark crimson power swirling around her. Naruto's eyebrow started twitching while he held back the urge to smack his head against a wall. God, she has as bad a flair for the dramatic as Uncle Oz does. Just thinking of his eccentric adoptive uncle made Naruto want to hide deeper in the shadows to hide his would-be shame, never noticing how dark energy started to seep into the shadows, making him harder to see. Pushing his thoughts off, Naruto refocused on the soon-to-be battle, placing names to the girls' faces. Next to race, as always it would seem, was Himejima Akeno. Sparks of electricity dancing along her form, which soon turned into a full-body light show as her clothes were destroyed and then remade into a classic white top, long red skirt Maiko outfit. If she realized she was naked through most of the change, she didn't show it or didn't care. Her eyes were wide open as she scanned the room vividly. What is she looking for? On the other side of the red-haired leader was the student council president, Shitri Sona, or is it Citri? That was the second house she mentioned. She's a magic user also, it appears, so I guess that explains why she helped stop the school. Her vice president right behind her with some sort of mirror in hand, as she too seems to be scanning the room, though not nearly as actively as Himejima was. The girls themselves seemed to suddenly become as weary after Ria's opening declaration, her attempt at setting the mood and a slight bit of mental warfare to make the enemy second-guess themselves or become angry and unthinking. This time the effort was in vain. As soon as she closed her mouth and wave for emptiness overcame everyone in the room. Even the stray devils seemed to become suddenly uneasy, looking around themselves, hopelessness and fear overtaking their minds. Akeno barely took the time to think as in a flash she was clothed in her Maiko garments, her eyes intently searching for what only she knew the source to be. After all, she had experienced this nothingness before. The damning hollow feeling that seemed to make you feel more isolated and alone than words could describe, only sucking all the pleasure out of you as if you'd never feel it again. I know this is his power, but is this how he truly feels? Shaking herself from her thoughts, she slides closer to her king. But he is here. I don't know where, but this is the feeling I tried to explain to you, his nothingness. The long-haired queen whispered. Ria's eyes widened before narrowing again. It can't be helped, we'll have to look for him after we finish with the strays. I hope to Satan he's okay." She trailed off to a mutter at the end, only Akeno hearing her whispered hope. Nodding to each other, the two talking girls quickly turned towards the monsters they had come here to hunt, charging up magic circles that appeared in front of them. "Let's finish this quickly so that we may rejoin the others with their battle," Rias stated loudly to shake the other two from the overwhelming feeling. The call seemed to be the cue for both sides to wake up and start their battle. As Akeno released several streams of lightning towards the group devils, Ria shot out an orb of the crimson energy that had been swirling around her when she entered. The rogues hadn't sat idle after the call though, the horned snakes flattened themselves to the floor, allowing the streams of electricity to fly over them, as the spider women quickly and effectively spun a web in front of them, catching Ria's destructive orb before it could move close enough to hurt them. Something that shocked the girls thoroughly, as this had never happened before. Seeing them stop momentarily, the bloody ape demon rushed forwards whipping its tentacles at the two lead girls. The attack was luckily stopped from reaching its goal, as Tsubaki stepped in front of them erecting a defense barrier, while Sona called forth a magical dragon of water from her own casting circle. Realizing the need to continue quickly, Ria started launching off smaller fast-moving orbs in rapid succession, aiming at the two fast-moving snakes that were coming from either side of the hulking ape demon that had yet to stop whipping at Tsubaki's strong defense shield. Akeno, while keeping an eye out for as the yet unseen boy, started to herd the spider towards the far side of the room, away from where the grouped-up girls were, using blasts of lightning aimed to move it where she wants or be charred if it stopped to look around. Building up for a stronger attack at the end, Akeno stepped in time with the creature coordinating her attacks to help with timing and aim. Even with the effect of Naruto's power, Akeno gained a grin on her face when the spider ran right into Sona's dragon, just as she released her stored-up magic lightning on it at the same time. The combined attack killed the spider woman before she had time to fall to the ground. None of the fighters noticed that the young Lamia wrapped in a dirty worn blanket slipped out the door and flee into the forest. Rias jumped back, just barely dodging one of the Sirister's attacks as it lunged at her with its horn, causing a tear to form across the stomach of her shirt. The double team was really starting to wear her down. While her power of destruction was hurting them, the resin coating their scales took the brunt of the damage before the smaller orbs dissipated, and they didn't give her time or stay still long enough for her to charge a larger orb at them. She couldn't even fly to escape their lunge attacks as the hall was covered in the spider woman's webs. She had touched one and it started eating through her clothes, so she didn't take the chance of what it might do to her. Regaining her balance after landing, she looked up in time to see the second Sirister flying towards her face, fangs bared, to sink into her flesh, only to watch, in what seemed to be slow motion, as a massive blast of lightning struck it in its side, sending the beast into a wall. Rias, not about to let this chance escape her, rapidly charged a larger orb that was sent towards the fallen snake, while retreating to Akeno's side to take stock of their situation. She was happy to note they were down to only two creatures left, one of which was being effectively dealt with by Sona and Tsubaki, while with Akeno's aid the last snake shouldn't be an issue. However, she should never have dropped her guard as fear gripped her heart and the ground behind her and Akeno exploded outwards. Rias and her queen could only look up in awed horror as three jagged barbed tentacle-like tongues shot out of the razor-sharp tooth-filled maw of a death worm behind them. Rias couldn't even react as the spikes moved at an unreal speed towards her, never even registering that the empty feeling increased by a power of 10 for half a moment before she roughly crashed into Akeno, causing both to be flung out of the death worm's grasp. Naruto started to wonder if he was even going to be needed as he watched the 4-on-4 fight taking place below him. After their grand entrance, the girls quickly gathered their wits and started to attack in tandem against the enemy group. Even if there was one or two spots they could have done better and not stop to gawk at something, he had to admit they showed a lot of promise. Something was off though. He could feel something was nearby, lurking just beyond his senses. It was when Rias landed beside her black hair friend that Naruto saw it. The ground just outside the front door sank down a few inches. Nothing major but noticeable if you watched it. Naruto was moving before the girls even realized what was happening. Ebony flames exploded from his body as he raced the rising beast about to devour the two girls. Realizing he wasn't going to be able to get both of them out of the way of the attack if he picked them up, he had to make a choice. No choice at all. He thought with a grim smile as he slammed into Rias with his shoulder, transferring all his gained momentum into the shocked girl, letting the beast's attack skewer him through the chest, one destroying his heart while the other two ripped through his stomach. Disappear. He whispered while glaring up at his cause of death, wishing to take it with him before his eyes closed and he was no more. Rias and Akeno could only stare in shock, along with everyone else in the building. They were sure they were about to die. Death worms were S-class monsters, creatures touched by Hades himself. The slime that coats them is highly magic resist and can make them difficult to track even the expert hunters. Although not considered sentient, they are intelligent enough to set traps to ambush their prey. Instead of seeing the inside of such a beast's stomach though, here they were watching as the person they'd been trying to follow and catch was now being punctured full of holes in their place, while flames of the purest black flowed up and around him. His almost dead body looked up at the monster with a deathly grim smile and whispered something. What happened next would be burned into the minds of the girls for the rest of their days. The flames took on a life of their own as Naruto's body fell away. Twisting and turning in on itself, the fire slowly turned to the shape of a western dragon that roared at the worm before flinging itself down the beast's throat. The death worm's dying screams were akin to a chainsaw scrapping across an unbreakable chalkboard. The four girls fell to their knees while covering their ears, hoping to block out the noise, while the ape demon tried to attack the worm that was causing it pain. Just as the ape was 5 feet away, the worm's body exploded into black flames, taking the ape with it, leaving only a hole in the ground and the, now dead, body of Naruto Uzumaki in the middle of a circle of burnt wood. Trying again 3. Changing tides. When Naruto opened his eyes once more, it was to a dingy stone brick ceiling and walls, rather than his off-white tiled ceiling of his apartment that he'd become accustomed to seeing. The area was surprisingly clear to see even if there was no true light source. The bricks themselves seemed to be giving off the light. Slowly rising into a seated position, the blonde youth tried to get a better view of his situation, to hopefully understand what had happened. The structure he was in was massive, stone walls easily reaching 25-30 feet in the air, before connecting to a slightly arched ceiling that spanned 15 feet wide. Each stone seemed to vary in size, yet was clearly uniform in cut, giving a unique yet strong and stable feel to the walls and floor. Looking forward and backwards clearly showed this was a tunnel of some sort, but where it led and how he ended up here wasn't as obvious. Standing slowly and moving towards the nearest wall, he examined the stones before him more closely, showed that they were filled with black pulsing veins of energy that glowed white at their outlines. The white glow was what allowed the area around him to be seen. Sighing as there was no clue as to where he was, Naruto focused on recalling what his last memories were. Gasping, the boy's hands flew to his head as he was assaulted with 2 overlapping sets of memories flashing before his eyes. The first set was of him standing above his red-haired and black-haired fellow students, them all with shocked looks of horror on their faces, while he had 3 bone spear-like objects protruding from his abdomen, one of which clearly having stabbed through his heart. Ebony flames licking up his body yet causing him no pain. The second set of memories were of him standing inside a golden construct, instinctively knowing it was of a 9-tailed fox, while glaring at a 3-eyed woman with long pale purple hair. One of the construct's clawed paws was digging through her body while blood leaked out of her lips. The landscape around the two was nothing more than a barren crater-filled wasteland. The woman's fierce glare was unnerving, even while she was clearly dying. She spoke. Otsutsuki Kagaya, her name jumped to mind, but Naruto couldn't hear what was said, only to watch the effect. The air between them was torn open into the blackness of space, pulling his body in before he could even hope to fight it. Both fighters soon drifting in the endlessness of the void. His last view was of Otsutsuki glowing with multicolored energy, then he was back in the tunnel once more. Panting heavily to try and catch his breath, Naruto leaned back against the wall. What the hell was that? Well, he knew the first set was his death last night, the second set made no sense to him. Yet felt as real as the first. Taking a few minutes to reorient himself and get his breath under control, Naruto stood up once more and muttered aloud, "Well, I'm dead." The statement was so deadpan even the blonde wanted to facepalm himself. Looking around to see nothing around, Naruto get a helpless shrug of his shoulders and turned to start walking down the tunnel, not really caring where it was to lead. His heels gave off a dull thud as he walked, normally too soft to hear even over a soft breeze. However, with the dead silence of the cavern's building, every moment the boy made could be heard with crystal clarity. After what seemed to be hours of twists and turns, innumerable side tunnels that glowed with eerie colors, the tunnel finally led out to an immeasurable chamber. The walls that surrounded the tunnel he just exited just shoot straight up, stretching beyond sight, while having a slight curve on each side of him, they still disappearing from view into a radiant darkness. Okay, if this is supposed to be hell, I'm really not impressed. Naruto grumbled to himself while looking around at this apparent center chamber. A deep loud chuckling reverberated throughout the room, quickly made Naruto reset his guard, while his eyes whipped across the camera, looking for the source of the noise. "Sorry kid, however this isn't hell, it's your mind." Following the voice back. To what he could only assume was the middle of the extensive room, the blue-eyed blonde was greeted with a sight that he couldn't have imagined ever laying eyes on. Stepping out of infinite darkness was a massive dark orange fox with black lines running from around its amused garnet eyes off to its overly large ears, 9 long thick tails that didn't want to stop moving slowly swirled in the air behind it as it walked. Naruto stared up at the fox that easily outsides the tunnel he just left by at least 5 times and couldn't stop his mouth from running, as his brain didn't seem to want to work. How the fuck did you get that big? The fox seemed taken aback by the rather random question, stared at the newly arrived human. "I ate all my vegetables," it asked back in a seemingly unsure tone, its deep growling voice reverberating off the walls. Finally getting his brain back in working order, Naruto closed his eyes tightly and counted backward from 10, calming his mind to get it work through everything again while stepping back into the opening from the tunnel. Once he was sure he could think again, the boy reopened his eyes and looked up at the massive beast, noticing for the first time that its front paws were shaped more like hands than paws of an animal. "I'm guessing that you're more than you appear, so let's start easily and work our way up. What and who are you?" The fox grinned, even if it looked a little nostalgic and remorseful, before slowly laying down, so they both had an easier time looking at one another. "At least you're more thoughtful this time around, kid. My name is Kurama, Kyuubi no Yoko. Strongest of the Biju, and at one time your partner in combat." Naruto raised an eyebrow at this comment. Relax his stance only slightly at seeing the creature talking without hostility. "Biju, tailed beast. I've never heard that term before, and what did mean by partner in combat? As far back as I can remember, I've always been alone." Kurama's eyes closed while sighing deeply. "You are both right and wrong in that regard, kid. You don't remember it, but we've been together for over 30 years. Red eyes opened and stared directly into blue, shocked once, while a large furred hand came up in a stop motion. "Allow me to explain before you start asking questions. I only have limited time with you, and there is a lot we have to cover." Seeing Naruto close his mouth and nod, Kurama continued. "First off, I'm not really here, I'm still back in the elemental nations. I simply stole this idea from your father and left a piece of my soul inside of you. Also want to say that you won, Naruto. That may not make sense to you now, but it will once your memories start to return more clearly to you. Now getting back on topic. You are a lot older than you think you are, kid. I've watched most of your memories of this life the second I became active, and all those dreams you've been having are really flashback to your former life." Naruto blinked in surprise. He'd been a hyperactive orange-wearing idiot in his last life. "Man, I must have been an idiot." He blinked again as his thought echoed across the chamber, causing Kurama to let out a loud boisterous laugh. "Yes, kid. You were very much an idiot back then, not completely your fault, but you didn't really do much to change it either." The fox explained with a grin that showed he was insulting the boy but wasn't doing it to truly offend him. And received a lifted middle finger in reply. "Maybe if we had more time." Naruto quickly spoke up before Kurama to continue. "Wait, I didn't ask, but are you male or female?" This time it was Kurama's turn to blink, as it had never really been asked that before. "I'm Chakra, kid, I can take any gender I choose." "Oh, sorry, I just didn't want to end up offending you by using the wrong pronoun," Naruto said, unconsciously rubbing the back of his head with one hand. The large fox had to hold back a grin as it saw a sign of the old Naruto staring to slip into the boy. Shrugging its massive shoulders, Kurama let out a small chuckle. "Don't worry about it, kid, you're likely the first being that ever asked and didn't just assume I was male. Made me want to shift to female just to mess with everyone's perception." Naruto snorted slightly while a grin showed itself. Being this close to both sets of memories was affecting the boy's personality. "However, that is something for another time. When you arrived here, did you see any memories?" Naruto furrowed his brow as he recalled both set of memories. "Yes, I saw myself being killed twice. Once by the worm to save my classmates, and another time by a weird chick with 3 eyes. Kurama snorted. "Only you would refer to Otsutsuki Kagaya, the rabbit goddess, as a weird chick with 3 eyes. The massive fox said, still laughing slightly. "However, that isn't quite correct, you didn't die from Kagaya's attack. Hell, it wasn't so much an attack to kill you, it was her intent to unmake you." Naruto looked both confused and slightly worried at that comment. "Had the attack succeeded, time would have rewritten itself as if you never had been born, something that we, the Biju, didn't want to let happen. So with all of our combined will, and more power than any of us thought possible to give, we managed to stop the effects, but not without consequences to you." Naruto could feel the sorrow coming of the Biju and took a step forward, only for the fox to continue his tale. "Your body reverted back to a childlike state, and all your chakra and abilities you gained were lost, as well as you were affected by your time in the void." Naruto's stride took him right to Kurama's right pinky finger and sat beside it while looking up into the shining red slitted eyes. "What do you mean I was affected by the void? You say that like it's both good and bad." Kurama's grin was so big now its eyes were forcing themselves closed. "You seem so much smarter now that you stopped to think about things, kid." Calming itself down, Kurama looked to the boy's deadpan face and had to hold back laughing again. "You likely already know most of the changes that happened to you, increased bone density, heavily compacted muscle tissue, and the void flames that surrounded you during your brush with death by that worm." Naruto nodded as he thought back on events in his life that proved those points, before his eyes narrow when Kurama said brush instead of just death. However, now it seems someone wants you to have a third chance at life, as they have somehow restarted your body, keeping your soul inside of it. However, they are trying to force you to be connected to someone, some sort of subservient bond. Both I and the void energy in you are naturally resisting it. I'm going to warn you now though, whatever they were trying to make you is also being changed by the void energy and my own demonic chakra, so I have no idea what you are going to become, but you'll be no one's slave. Naruto looked up into Kurama's defiant yet concerned eyes and grinned. Thanks for the save, Kurama. The fox gave a happy smile in return. No problem, Naruto, you fulfilled your promise to us, proving yourself to be worthy of our friendship. I'll always help you in any way I can. Speaking of which, we left you with some presents. Since you connected with my chakra, you can use them now. Kurama said with a grin, pride leaking through in massive amounts. We couldn't give you as much as we wanted to, as the others only had a small amount of chakra to work with until they could be reborn, but they mostly helped with what they could. So for starters, I left you with 3 full tails worth of my chakra, convert to link to you, and make your body produce its own Biju-like chakra. Which is thicker and more powerful than human chakra, so with the others you now could be considered a new 4 tails. It was clear the fox was happy to have given more than the others. Naruto only smiled in gratitude before Kurama continued. We also managed to make your affinities as strong as we could, however we only could do so with wind, fire and lightning. Now the last 3 things are from me strictly, so pay attention. Naruto could hold back a snicker at the prideful fox. Hi Kurama Heim. He said while sitting up straight with a mock salute. Kurama snorted at the princess crack but grinned all the same. Okay, first I've reactivated the advanced version of the Uzumaki regeneration you had back in the elemental nations. You'll be by no means immortal, but killing you is going to be much harder. Your healing is tied directly into how much energy you have. The more tired you are, the slower you'll heal. The fox stopped to make sure Naruto understood, which was answered with a nod. Next is that I've given you my eyes. I'm going to ignore that indignant look and explain. Focusing chakra into your eyes will allow you to see energy, speed up your perception of what's happening, give you enhanced night vision, and see at greater distances. You won't have the photographic memory of the cursed Uchiha clan Sharingan, however you also won't have to worry about going blind either. Kurama explained, leaving out how the Sharingan could blind someone. Naruto blinked at how much was usable with his new eyes and muttered a small thanks after Kurama had finished explaining the fox's eyes abilities. Smiling smugly for a minute, Kurama remembered what the last gift was and its smile dropped a slight bit. The last gift is more a return on what was yours to start with. I took all the memories from your life that I had, which I got through you living them, as well as everything I could get from my other half, and am giving them back to you. So instead of just random flashback and dreams, you're going to regain all your memories without fail. You'll still have to wait, as to just suddenly remember everything would just short-circuit your brain. This time Naruto could stared in wide-eyed shock, tears slowly trickling down his face completely unnoticed. Years of never knowing anything about himself, of fearing what wrong with him, all his questions about everything about himself was going to be answered by this being in front of him. Losing himself completely in the moment, Naruto jumped forward on top of the fox's nose and hugged it, repeating thank you over and over as his silent tears continued. Kurama said nothing and simply waited for its one-time friend to come back to himself. As stated earlier, the fox had relived Naruto's life while waiting for the boy to arrive. It knew all too well the emptiness Naruto had experienced this time while growing up again. The fox could only hope that his memories would help him regain that spark of life he'd lost. It took a few minutes before Naruto regained control of himself and sat up, wiping away what was left of the tears as he did so. I'm sorry about that, Kurama, I get a kit. The fox said, waving off the epilogue. Turning its head back towards where its tails were, both saw them starting to slowly fade. Looks like my time is up, Naruto. Before I go though, just a heads up, your empathy was always your own ability, my chakra simply enhanced it. This is going to happen again once you can use your own demonic chakra correctly, so don't be surprised. You were always a good person, Naruto, don't let this life change that, open and meet people, loneliness can be filled with friendship as you always used to say. Kurama said as the fading finally reached its head. Come back to visit once you can, kid, we miss you. I will, I promise. Naruto said. Kurama smiled widely before its head disappeared, causing the boy to fall to the stone floor below. I won't give up until I do. A glint of fiery determination appeared in his eyes. His pupils stretching into slits and a small bit of the gray started to brighten to its bright blue color. With his vow made and a goal finally in mind, Naruto's body followed Kurama's example and started to fade away. When Naruto finally regained awareness, he could instantly notice several things wrong with his situation. The first thing that he felt was off what he was in a bed instead of his futon. He could tell just by how soft what he was sleeping on was and how badly his back wanted to crack because of it. The next thing he noticed was that the ceiling was once again wrong for what his apartment should be, though tiled this time they were industrial tiles much like what is found in schools or hospitals, alluding to what he remembered was not a dream or nightmare. Doing a mental check of his body informed him that not only was most of his wounds healed, he was also completely naked and not alone. Slowly lifting his head and looking down towards his bedmates, Naruto almost let his eyebrow twitch before he managed to stop the urge. Using his right shoulder as a pillow was a mop of scarlet hair, one so bright that there was no question in his mind who had taken up that spot. While on his left, black hair could be seen sprawled all across the bed, giving the dark red blankets an onyx cloak. The sensations he was getting through his body let him know that they were equally as naked as him under the covers. "I'm not sure I want to know what's going on," Naruto thought as he looked back at the ceiling. While not against the idea that he may have lost his first time to a threesome, he was a healthy teenage male after all. He had hoped he'd have memories to go with the experience. "Let's just ignore the fact I was dead when it likely happened." Shaking away the thoughts, as he really didn't know anything about what happened, so he was likely exaggerating his thoughts of what took place. Slowly and carefully the blonde teen began to extract himself from the mess of limbs that enclosed him. He'd just gotten to his knees and ready to stealthily find his clothes when a voice allowed him to know he'd been caught. His ghosty-kun not even going to say goodbye. Looking back to his dark-haired bedmate, who now had her eyes locked on him with a small smirk playing across her lips. Her head was lifted to rest on her right palm, while her left was laid out across her side. It took almost all his willpower not to let a blush to form, and his eyes dropped to where the blanket had fallen away from her body, exposing her luscious breasts to the cool morning air. "I didn't want to wake you," Naruto said while locking his slitted eyes with hers, before his head tilted slightly in confusion. "Ghosty." Akeno giggled lightly into her hand while sitting up completely in bed as the only male in the room stepped back off of it and to the floor. "Yufifif, it seems you don't know your own reputation." Naruto shot her raised eyebrow while he found his underwear and pants near a two-seated couch near the door to the room. "I know I try to keep a low profile, but this is the first I've heard myself referred to as a ghost, Himejima-san." Akeno pouted slightly. Ara, that won't do, ghosty-kun. You saved both mine and Butchu's lives. You don't need to be so formal. Please call me Akeno." While she said this she moved herself to the edge of the bed, subtly waking Rias as she went. Naruto was at this point looking at what was left of his black shirt and coat that he'd been wearing the night of the fight. Both had 3 gaping holes through them from front to back and enough dried blood to give them a red tinge. He could only frown in annoyance at the loss of one of his favorite coats before throwing it back onto the couch. "Well, it wasn't like I could just let 2 cute girls die. The world would be a lesser place without you in it," he said without really thinking about his words, not noticing the slight blush that crossed both Akeno's and the now awake Ria's faces. "We still can't thank you enough for that, Naruto-kun," Rias said, causing the blonde to look back from trying to find something to wear and look at her slightly oddly. "Something wrong, Naruto-kun?" "Say thank you again," he said, still with a slightly perplexed look. "Thank you?" Rias repeated questioningly. Naruto nodded sharply. "That's enough for me. You're welcome." He stated that with such finality it was as if the whole debate was over in his mind. The girls were left with stunned looks of shock while Naruto returned to thinking about what to do about clothes. "Mind telling me where we are?" he asked over his shoulder, "and maybe covering yourselves up?" Rias narrowed her eyes at his simple dismissal of her thanks, something that didn't sit right with her, however she'd have to come back to that. As much as her first thought was that he was dismissing the value of saving her, she remembered almost nothing about this boy made sense, so she'd have to wait and see before deciding how to react. "We are in my private bedroom in the old school building. Nobody knows where you live, so we brought you here to heal you." "Ah, thank you for that," Naruto said simple while moving to look out the window while the girls dressed. Having given up on finding any clothes for himself. "Ghosty-kun seems to be taking this rather well," Akeno said with a small grin. Naruto simple shrugged. "I was dead, now I'm not. There isn't any point thinking on it more than that." Akeno's eyes narrowed at the flipped response. "That's it?" "Yep, that's what it boils down to," Naruto said half-heartedly. "Besides, you magic girls seem to be able to bring people back." "And if we couldn't?" Rias questioned, cutting off Akeno's growing anger at the boy. "Then I died knowing I did something worthwhile." Naruto only turned his head to look over his shoulder while his eyes locked with the redheads. Both Akeno and her felt the unspoken and surprisingly hurtful words "better me" than you. Those words flashed through their mind, again reminding them that although still breathing Naruto was almost dead inside, having nothing to really live for. Sighing as he saw both girls started to sadden at his words. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose before facing the girls, who had managed to put on most of their school uniforms. "So can you tell me what I've missed?" The question was enough to knock the girls out of their funk, Rias taking the lead. "Right, let's head to the club room and I'll answer any questions you have." she said to the boy before turning to address the other girl. Akeno, would you please go and get Naruto-kun another shirt? Akeno smiled happily, of course, but you. I'll also prepare some breakfast for us. Thank you, Akeno. Rias replied with a kind smile on her lips. Naruto was about to say something, but his stomach beat him to it as it growled loudly enough that even Naruto could do nothing more than stare in shock. Ufifif, it seems Ghosty-kun is very hungry as well. Akeno giggled out as she exited the room without looking back. Naruto's head tilted slightly while he scratched his head. I still don't get where the Ghosty name comes in. Ria smirked slightly while started out into the hall warily. I think it's kind of fitting. Naruto rolled his eyes while falling in step behind the girl. Whatever you say, Red. Ria's eyebrow twitched. Red. Reaching out, the boy twirled a lock of her hair while copying her smirk. Yeah, it's kind of fitting. Her groan at having walked into that joke was all the answer Naruto needed to know he just won this round. Looking around while they moved through the halls gave Naruto his first question he wanted to ask. So why do you have a bedroom in Kuo's old school building? Ria smiled as she pushed open the door to the club room. We of the Occult Research Club actually have the entire old school building to ourselves in any way we require it. She waved her hand in a bit of a show to present the room for Naruto's inspection, hoping to awe him a bit. Naruto's eyes scanned the converted classroom quickly, making mental note of the large magic circle that took up a fair amount of floor space at the far end of the room, right in front of the large oak desk, as well as the comfortable couches near the window. He could make out runic symbols spread across most of the blackboards that lined the walls, as well as small tables set up like altars with candles and more magic circles on them. The only thing that throws of the whole gothic motif and causes Naruto to twitch at something his uncle would likely do was the bathtub and shower set up in the corner of the room right next to the door to the room. It didn't even have a divider wall set up for modesty, only a curtain. Well, you certainly went all out to make it someone's perfect playroom. If it's a goth's or a pervert's, I can't tell. Ria's smile grew right up till she heard the end of his comment, causing her smile to drop and her almost start to pout. Hey, this isn't a pervert's playroom. Naruto deadpanned at her while pointing to the shower. Red, your club is made up of 3 extraordinarily attractive women and a pretty boy, and you have a shower in the middle of your club room. I'd imagine any of the pervy trio would die of nosebleeds the second they walked in this room. With his eyes locked on Ria's, the boy didn't notice the slightly blushing young white-haired girl make her way to the door of the club, having just heard his off-the-cuff compliment on her looks. The fact that he said it without meaning for her to hear made it more meaningful as he wasn't using it to get on her good side. Even Ria's couldn't completely stop the pink that dusted her cheeks from his sincere compliment on her looks. While many had called her good-looking in many flowery words, they all had done so with intent behind them, be it to soften her up of something or to try and smooth the ruffled feathers. Naruto, however, said it bluntly and factually as if he didn't even know he had complimented them. Is that all you can say about me, Naruto? Just a pretty boy. Yudo's voice drifted in as he appeared in the open doorway. I could call you a narcoleptic pretty boy if sciences class is any indication. Naruto countered with a grin till he saw the bags under the other boy's eyes, as well as the fatigue he was trying to cover. Although you look like shit right now, when was the last time you slept, Yudo? The day before we brought you here. So about 3 days ago, give or take a few hours. The rough-looking knight said with an easy shrug. Yudo chuckled at Naruto's wide-eyed stare. What can I say, you are the closest thing to a guy friend I have, I was worried. Naruto's hand once again returned to pinching the bridge of his nose while he took in the fact that he had been asleep for 3 days. Thank you for your concern, but as you can see I'm still here and I won't be insulted if you fall asleep on the couch. Noticing the young white-haired girl that had been able to sniff him out during their games over the summer had sunk in during his talk, he looked over at her. Furrowing his brow in thought, Naruto tried his best to connect the young girl's face with a name, only to keep coming up blank. Her name's Taoju Kaneko, she'll be a first year when classes start up again. Yudo spoke up, answering Naruto's unspoken question, causing the larger blonde to look at him. You were trying too hard to remember something while staring at her. You saw her with us when we were looking for you, so I assumed you thought she was already in Kuo and just couldn't remember her. Ah, thanks. During the two boys' back and forth, Ria's mater was around to the desk and leaned onto the corner with her arms crossed under her bust, a small grin crossing her lips at the two's interaction. She let them trade barbs back and forth like they were old friends. However, she had to push back a frown that tried to make its way to her face when she notices how Naruto never let anyone within 2 feet of him and always kept his back to a wall. His muscles were also visibly tensed, as if he was ready to fight or run at a moment's notice. It took around 10 minutes for Akeno to rejoin the group carrying a long tray of food for everyone there, even as Naruto wasn't sure if he should sweat drop or blush as he saw that she had his new shirt tucked between her breasts, the end of it hanging down her shirt. Once she had set out the food, he just looked at her with a raised eyebrow. Ara, is there something I can help you with, Ghosty-kun? she asked looking as innocent as she could. Deciding if he should play along or not took Naruto a few seconds to think on. While he was quite used to verbal sparring because of his adoptive uncle, he was also very hungry. Finally he decided to eat before he got into any more topics of conversation, so with a shrug, he sat himself down beside Kaneko. "Nah, thanks for the food though." Akeno pouted a bit that he didn't take the bait, but it quickly shifted to a beautiful smile while she didn't remove his new shirt. "You're quite welcome, Ghosty-kun." Playing the part of dutiful hostess, Akeno made quick work to serve everyone their share of the food before sitting herself down across from their guest. The black-haired girl took a bite of her eggs before she looked at the others with a look of pride as she saw them all enjoying the food she'd just finished making. Only to stop and stare with shocked wide eyes as Naruto returned his now empty plate to the table. "Thank you, Akeno, that was delicious," Naruto said, causing everyone to look over at him in surprise. "Did you even taste it?" Kaneko asked in a quiet awe-filled voice. Naruto tilted his head to look down at the girl. "Of course I did, I said it was delicious, didn't I?" Ria sighed before going back to her food. "I'm not even going to ask." "Why does everyone say that?" Naruto asked while he started pulling his new shirt on. Riaz looked up and was going to comment before her voice failed her. Whipping her head back to Akeno, who was still looking at the empty plate, not even noticing that the whiskered blonde had managed to steal his shirt away from her. Looking back at him only to see he was at the door with a smirk on his face. "Why?" Riaz tried to say before Naruto held up his hand to stop her. "I know you're here, but I've been out for 3 days. If I don't get back and call Uncle Oz, the perv will start sending out a search party." The blonde explained as everyone was starting to come back to their senses. "I'll be back in a few hours after I shower and get some new clothes." With those final words the blonde disappeared again, not even leaving a trace that he'd been there. Yudo tried to race to the door to catch him, but even if the night was faster, the blonde always seemed to disappear without fail. "Slippery blonde bastard." The princely boy muttered to himself as he turned back to the others. Giving out a resigned sigh, he returned himself to his meal, intent on finishing it and finding a place to have a nap before the other boys return. Riaz only matched the boy's sigh. "At least," he said, "he'll be back this time, we won't have to try and catch him." Everybody there let out a sigh of relief at that before getting back to their breakfast. No one noticed Kaneko's furrowed eyebrows as she looked at her plate and thought. Naruto let out a soft sigh as he stepped out of the shower in his apartment, using his fluffy white towel to dry his ever-messy hair. It was just over 2 hours since he left the old school building after eating the relatively small breakfast given to him. Once he'd gotten back to his place, he'd made himself a much larger, more filling breakfast from his kitchenette. After his fill, he'd search for his cell phone to message his benefactor, only to find it was broken during the incident. Sighing at having another expense to deal with, a blonde-haired teenager left the kitchenette living room area of his small apartment and entered his bedroom. Stepping over his queen-sized futon that took up most of the floor space, Naruto flipped open his laptop computer. It only took a handful of minutes for the youth to type up a quick email to his Uncle Oz, informing the man of his broken phone and how he'd been busy with people from school and hadn't been back to his apartment till now. Not a lie in any way, he simply doesn't need to know the why. Naruto thought with a smirk, as he always considered keeping his nighttime activities secret as payback for not being told what the man did for a living. Now he once again was in his room, though in the process of getting dressed, looking back at the reply email. Most of which was Oz complaining to him about how he went through so many cell phones. Though he was thanked for emailing him this time and asked to send his new number once he got a new phone. "Money has already been wired to your account, stop breaking them," was the last sentence in the email. Naruto snorted. Even if he told the man to stop paying for everything or let him use his allowance to pay for the phones or other things, it never happened. The man had no sense of timing either. Most years he got 3 or 4 gifts for his birthday, though he had yet to have one arrive in the same month as it. Christmas gift always arrived between April and July. Anything else, he was just the man made up an excuse to send it random knickknacks he got for no reason. Much of which was now collecting dust in the boy's storage unit or closet. The blonde really didn't bother with decorating, nor could he understand the reason for it. All his walls were bare of anything other than paint. His kitchen was always clean of any dishes or stray papers, his coffee table holding only the television remote unless he was in the room. The only item that showed any sort of insight into the teen's personality was the bookshelf that was overstocked with books. Shaking off his musing, Naruto finished dressing himself, this time in simpler clothes, plain black pants, his flame-patterned shoes, and a dark blue hooded shirt with a picture of a fox on the front. Patting his necklace once more, the boy nodded while grabbing the borrowed shirt. It was time to learn what he had gotten himself into. A suffering groan sounded from a frustrated redhead as she rubbed her temples, attempting to relieve the pain of her brother-induced headache. While she did love her family, her brother's incessant stupidity grated on her nerves whenever she tried to discuss something important. It had taken a full hour and a half after Naruto had run off just for her to ask him to set up an appointment with a Juka Beelzebub for her. Even then it had taken Grafia to make him stop complaining that she never wanted to talk to him long enough to listen to her. Riaz looked up at her peerage and couldn't stop the slight grin that grew across her lips despite the headache. Ever since they had started chasing the whiskered blonde, she could see the changes in her group of friends, but it wasn't nearly as pronounced as right now. Yudo, the ever-proper knight, was sprawled out over one of the two couches snoring loudly, his shirt half rolled up his chest scratching his stomach. Hineko, the ever-blank-faced seemingly emotionless rook, was often seen almost pouting while thinking about something, often losing herself in thought or staring at the maps of town they had used to try and keep track of him or find his home. Whenever she was asked about it, Kaneko would often say it was nothing. The most anyone could get out of the reserved girl was that she was trying to figure out why he smelled familiar. The day she was curled up in the couch across from her snoring knight, twitching whenever he got too loud. The kendo was standing behind her as always, but you could clearly see she was pouting about how Naruto had gotten away from her teasing so easily and without anyone even noticing. "Do you see something funny but you?" the ponytailed girl asked, drawing the red head out of her thoughts. "Not funny per se. I just think it's amusing that Naruto can cause this much of a reaction without even fully joined us yet," Ria said while turning to look up at her longtime friend and queen. Before Akeno could comment, however, both girls jumped in surprise as a voice from the doorways called out to them. "You say that like me refusing never crossed your mind, Red?" the subject of the two's conversation said as he stepped into the now open doorway. Naruto smirked as he saw the two girls he'd woken up beside jumped when he announced his return. Enjoying a little payback for them teasing him this morning. Ria's eyebrow twitched as she glared at the smirking blonde boy that was now leaning against the doorframe to the room. Her irritation only lasted till Yudo released a snort before turning his head the other way and started snoring again, which caused the three people still awake in the room to snicker at his expense. Once they calmed down again, Ria spoke again. "So are you going to stay here this time or vanish on us again?" Naruto raised an eyebrow at her question. "I'll listen to what you want to say, but I promise nothing yet." Riaz blinked in surprise at his evasive answer. It took her a few seconds before she even realized what he was talking about, not having intended to make it sound like a trap. The redhead released another soft groan as she thought about how this conversation was likely to go with someone as paranoid as Naruto was coming off, and considering what had happened, she really wasn't going to enjoy this. "I think you may want to sit down, this is likely to take a while to explain." Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly, while his muscles tensed. He did not like the tone in her voice. It made her sound as if she already knew how he was going to react and he wasn't going to like it. "I think I'll stand for now, thank you." The kendo could see how on edge he was and couldn't help but worry how Riaz was going to handle this. Both knew how things happened they had done had put them in an awkward position. Laying a comforting hand on her king's shoulder, she could only offer a reassuring smile as they were about to lay everything on the line. Closing her eyes, Riaz took a deep breath. Once she calmed herself down enough to not rush, she opened her eyes and stared straight into Naruto's, something that nothing to help her nerves, and pushed forward with her explanation. "To explain to you what happened to you, I'm going to have to give you a little bit of history behind it. What do you know about the Bible?" Big leather-bound book with a bunch of stories about some god, seems to be messed with so much over the years that most of the stories in it contradict each other. Naruto replied without thought, his face showing slight confusion about her question, as well as her and Akeno's wince. "Well, I do believe that some of the modern ones have been messed with, as you said. The biblical God does really exist. Now I know you're going to question me on this, but hear me out until the end, then I'll answer any questions you have, okay?" Riaz asked to make sure the blonde didn't leave before she got everything explained. Naruto gave her a scrutinizing look, but nodded once. "Thank you," Riaz said with a slight bow of her head. "As I was saying, he does exist and so do the devils and angels, along with many other supernatural beings, much like the ones you saw that night of the battle. However, there is another faction between the angels and the devils, they are the fallen angels. Fallen angels are angels that have been cast out of heaven for falling into sin and sent to hell because of this. However, the devils wished to retain control of hell, so fighting was inevitable. Devils make pacts with humans in exchange for a price, while fallen angels take control of humans and use them to destroy us devil. Angel have been assigned by the gods to eliminate both the fallen angels and devils, leading to a three-way standoff. Are you following so far?" Riaz asked, having moved around from behind the desk to lean against the front of it, allowing her to see more eye to eye with Naruto. "Following, yes, understand what you're getting at not so much," Naruto said, nodding to the just waking up Kaneko before crossing his arms across his chest and focusing on Riaz again. "The three factions are in a standoff now, but it hasn't always been that way. Until 300 years ago the factions were at open war with each other. By the end all three sides had lost so many of their numbers we were all looking at annihilation. Thus the ceasefire was called, however many on all sides didn't want to stop fight. For us devils it broke into a civil war. In the end our numbers were so low that unless we started mass breeding, we were unlikely to ever fully recover. Luckily an alternative was found. Based around the human game of chess, high-class devils are given the means to reincarnate other being into a servant devil. These reincarnated devils are called a peerage, setting the high-class devil as the king. This is what I did to you. After you died I resurrected you as a member of my peerage. Rias finished with a smile. Naruto however was not smiling, his knuckles had become white from clenching his fists. So let me see if I understand this right. I died 3 nights ago protecting you too. Naruto motioned his head in a nod towards where Rias and Akeno were, getting nods in return. And in return you tried to turn me into a devil and your slave. His voice dropped to a growl as he finished his question. Rias' eyes shot wide open at the way he said that. No. Well, some devils see their peerage as slaves. The Gremory clan sees them as friends and family. Not slaves. She said quickly while waving her hands in front of her, as if attempted to wave away his accusation. Naruto grunted, but lost some of the growl in his voice. Can you take it back? No, if I did you'd die. Rias said almost pleadingly, she had honestly wanted him in her peerage, but she didn't want him to hate her, because she didn't give him a choice. Server die huh? Naruto said, his tone becoming cold as his aura started to seep out into the room. I do not serve. I'm not a Pokemon you catch and will suddenly listen to you commands read. Kaneko's eyes shot wide open, as this was the first time she truly felt Naruto's aura. The emptiness that Akeno had described was nothing like feeling it firsthand, it was like falling into an endless pit of despair, as if everything that made you a person was ripped away, but you were forced to live with nothing left to live for. Within moments of the power escaping Naruto, Kaneko was overwhelmed by the feeling, tears leaked from her eyes, memories of when she felt like this before rushing back to her. Only made worse as she knew that Naruto himself felt this exact same way. Naruto please listen. Kaneko. Akeno exclaimed cutting Rias off as the black-haired teen rushed from beside the redhead to the young white-haired girl. The shock of her sudden yell knocked the two out of the argument to look at the weeping youth who couldn't take her tear-filled eyes off the elder blonde. Even as Rias rushed over to help comfort her. Not alone. The young girl whispered, golden soulful eyes locking with hollow blue. Yes I am. Don't have to be. Do not bow. You won't. We shall see. Akeno and Race could only watch the back and forth between the two. While Akeno and Yuto could understand Naruto's hurtful past, Kaneko could honestly say that she had felt as he does. Akeno and Yuto had both fought to live before Rias appeared and helped them. Kaneko had been too at the point of not even caring if she lived anymore, as she had felt that she had nothing left to live for. Rias had come to her and offered her that, a new family, a new name and a new life. Naruto didn't have someone to give him that. Yes, Azazel had given him a chance to make a life for himself, but he wasn't there with him as he grew up only visiting the boy every so often and calling to check up on him. He was grateful to the dual hair-colored man for all he'd done, but it never filled the hollow feeling, something that Naruto grew to just accept as a part of life for him. Before anyone could say anything else everyone was forced to look towards the couch to cross from the girls, as the yet-to-awaken Yuto snorted again loudly and tossed in his sleep open more, ending with him falling to the floor. All watched a few seconds, expecting a moan for pain or a startled shout. However all they received was another loud snore as the comatose boy refused to return from his slumber. That event relaxed everyone from the tense air that had formed as the girls giggled at the normally composed boy was now displaying his sloth-like side. Naruto could only shake his head at his fellow blonde, I'm glad he never got this bad in class, or I'd never be able to wake him up. After Rias managed to compose herself she looked to Naruto with a small smile. I thank you for taking care of my servant while he is in class Naruto. Didn't do it if you read, Prince here just gets his enough flack from everyone in school he doesn't need the teachers after him too. Naruto said waving off her thanks. Ria's smile grew a bit as she saw more of the good person Naruto hide. All the same I thank you. He is very dear to me, as are all of my friends. Naruto shrugged. To him he wasn't really doing much for the other guy, so he didn't think he needed any thanks for it. Meh, it's not like I do much. Naruto then pushed himself off the wall to look back at the girls, however before he could say anything else he felt one of his hands being gripped tightly in a hug. Looking down slightly Naruto blinked at the white-haired girl he hadn't seen move. What are you doing kitten? Kaneko blinked up at him while tilting her head to the side a bit, confusing clear in her eyes. Using his other hand the tall blonde lightly tapped her cat-faced hair clip, letting her know why he called her that. Don't go. Why not? You belong here. How? I have been there. How? This time there was an edge to Naruto's voice, one that made Akeno and Rias jump a bit in shock. As up till now they were mystified at how the two were able to talk so much with so few words. Kaneko however didn't recoil at all from the edge, she seemed to hold him tighter instead, something that left the other two even more surprised. My sister killed her king and ran away. Left me behind. Was to be killed, but Ria saved me. Filled my hollow. Stay. Naruto narrowed his eyes, he knew she left a lot out but also wasn't lying to him. One look in her eyes showed him she really did know how hollow a person can really get. The two stayed like that for a few minutes measuring the worth of one another's soul before Naruto finally looked at Ria's. I do not serve. Race and Akeno started to wilt as he spoke. They didn't notice Kaneko's lip twitching up. Ask me, never order or I'm gone. He finished causing the two girls' heads to shoot up in shock. Oh okay, Ria stuttered at the sudden turn around before she looked at the two, Kaneko having yet to release his hand. How? She has stared into the abyss too, it's in her eyes. Naruto said while nodding towards the white-haired girl. If she trusts you enough to allow herself near it again for me, I'll give you a chance. Ria's smile came back full force. Now I do have to answer to other devils, so from on you're going to have to call me Butchu while others are around. Naruto snorted at that. Not happening, Red. He said, causing everyone to blink before he explained. I told you I don't serve, you are not above me, nor are you below me. I throw myself in front of that worm to save Jumari Rias and Himejima Akeno, my schoolmates. You healed me, making us even, equal. Rias got a blush as she realized just how he saw her and how far he would go for her, his equal, someone that didn't care about class or standing, just her. Looking over she saw Akeno with a matching blush and hers started to fade as did her smile a bit. Are you going to let go of my hand anytime soon, kitten? Naruto's voice cut off her musings for going farther. Sit. Where? Ouch. That is going to take some getting used to. Rias thought as she watched Kaneko manage to make Naruto sit only for the white-haired girl to sit on him. Rias wanted to be angry about her seating, but the look of utter confusion on Naruto's face when the girl jumped onto his lap made it hard to do anything but laugh at the boy's lost look. Give me monsters to fight and perverts to deal with any day, women are just too damned confusing, Naruto thought as he watched Rias and Akeno fall back into the couch across from him laughed while Kaneko sat in his lap. It had taken Yudo another 3 hours to wake for his nap, finding himself face to foot with Naruto, the snickering jokes made at his expense made the boy blush almost to match his king's hair color. As it was, Naruto had passed almost his whole day with the group, they had left the old school building for dinner and for Naruto to replace his cell phone. Which Rias promptly added her number to as well as everyone else's from the orc. Kaneko hadn't let go of him during the entire time, which made dinner at the restaurant Rias had chosen interesting for the boy to say the least. And given Yudo enough material to fight back against Naruto's jokes. They hadn't spoken about any more devil information other than informing Naruto he could learn magic, which he instantly asked for books on as well as books on real alchemy. The talking was mostly daily things, hoping to better understand each other, though Rias had the most trouble trying to really understanding her new peerage member. They all to realize that most of his known personality, the one shown in public and at school, was a well-worn mask. The mask was so well worn though even Naruto himself forgot when he was slipping into it. Kaneko had been the person that had showed this to him and everyone, as while she was sitting on his lap or in contact with him, she could feel his emotions. Or lack thereof. Every time he would start falling into his mask reactions, she would start poking him in the ribs and tell him to stop. By the time he was leaving, his ribs were starting to get very sore. While he was okay with them, having already gotten used to Yudo already, he was still leery of opening up to them yet. His mind however was on another topic most of the night. He had quickly come to realize that his conversation with the giant fox demon could have easily been a hallucination due to his near-death experience. As such, he hadn't spoken about it. So after finally getting Kaneko to release him so that he could leave and finding an amusing spot just behind her ear that could lull her to sleep if pet long enough, he had said his good nights and left for his apartment. Once he was there, he pulled his laptop computer from his room and set it up on his coffee table. After his promised email to his guardian with his new number, Naruto wrote out his entire experience, along with a list of questions he had wished he had asked the great beast, as well as his own reactions. Many of which seemed natural at the time now seemed totally foreign to him. He disliked being touched. Having only allowed Kaneko as she seemed unused to it as well, he could feel that she was doing so for more than just keeping him there or wanting him to be uncomfortable, yet with the fox he openly hugged it. He hadn't been able to cry since he was 10, yet done so well there. The only thing that he could really do to prove or disprove it was find this chakra the beast had spoken of. If he could find this new energy, then he would trust what was spoken of, if not then he could start focusing on the magic Rias spoke of. Seating himself comfortably on the floor, legs crossed and feet bare, Naruto slowly closed his eyes and began the meditation exercises he learned from the many martial arts classes he had taken over the years, slowly sinking deeper into his own mind. While meditation was not new to him, as it was one of the ways he learned to cope with being alone most of the time, trying to find something inside himself when he didn't know what he was really looking for was a difficult process. 2 hours of searching himself, something truly surprising happened. He found himself back in the massive cave system. Standing from his seated position, Naruto slowly looked around. Everything was the same, he remembered, but this time he could see the exit of the tunnel that led into where he'd met Kurama. Swiftly walking towards the chamber hoping to get some more answers, he came to an abrupt stop when the chamber was no longer an endless black space that had held the fox. Large pits of ebony fire littered the cavern floor, giving off enough light for pathways to be made out. The part that stood out was an absolutely massive crimson waterfall that took up much of the back of the room. From what the boy could see, the flow seemed to pool before little amounts of the water leaked out into crevices along the chamber floor beside the paths. Slowly approaching the waterfall while staying on the path, Naruto couldn't help but feel amazed by the incredible feeling of power that emanating off the red liquid. Entranced by the feeling, the blonde boy began to kneel and reach his hand to the pool. "Boy, I wouldn't do that if I were you." A voice called out from behind him, breaking him from the feeling. Whipping himself back to the source of the voice, Naruto felt his own voice fail him as he could only stare at the other occupant of the room. Ria stared at her depleted chest set with a sigh. Only her and Akeno remained in the clubroom. The red-haired devil couldn't decide if what had happened with Naruto's revival was a good thing or not. It had showed her that he was a very strong individual and had been worth the time spent trying to get him to join her. However, she hadn't had a chance to ask him, nor did he give off any desire to live when she had revived him. She felt his aggravation while she explained how he was still alive. He was more than ready to fight them for his freedom, or if needed go right back to being dead. Had Kaneko not been there, she would have had to try to re-kill her savior, something she was not sure she could do, even if she could get past the emotional turmoil of the act. Rias gave an involuntary shiver as she remembered how close both she and Akeno had come to dying. Flashback. As soon as the black flames had dissipated, Rias and Akeno rushed back to where the boy had fallen. Being chased by Sona and Tsubaki, who were trying to check on their friends. "Rias. Akeno-san. Are you two okay?" Sona asked quickly as she finally caught up with the redhead. She was however ignored. She saw Akeno using her magic to try to purify and close the wounds caused by the death worm. Rias herself was summoning her evil pieces and laying them on the boy's chest, worry clear on her face as she wasn't getting any strong reaction from them. As the student council president started stepping closer to try to calm her friend, she finally realized why the two reacted the way they did. The boy laying dead at their feet was Uzumaki Naruto. The same boy they had been chasing to try and catch for the better part of a year now was now dead because he sacrificed himself to save the two that wanted to recruit him. Rias was losing hope by the second. None of her pieces were reacting strong enough to allow her to reincarnate the boy. Dropping her last pawn on his chest, the pieces only gave a slight glow, meaning while it was possible for him to reincarnate, she wasn't strong enough to do it. Tears started stinging her eyes. He was her hope, her savior, despite how annoying it could get when he was leading her around. She had honestly had fun chasing him through the summer. She hadn't even thought about him in months. Now here everything was coming to an end as the blonde boy had died protecting her and her friend because she let herself become distracted during battle. Die. The scream of the forgotten Ceres caused everyone to quickly shift their views to the incoming beast that was aiming for tearful red-haired girl. Only said girl's eyes weren't that of surprise like the others, nor were they fearful. Her tear-stained eyes showed nothing but rage as she dropped the rook piece that had been in her hand and lifted her hand towards the incoming monster. Red and black waves of power bloomed from her kneeling form in an instant before she released a solid beam of destruction. The blast was easily twice the size of the girl it came from and went straight from her into the sky. Rias held the beam going for a full minute, venting all her frustration and anger at the unlucky creature. The other girls stared in awe at the power the Gremory girl displayed until they saw her wilt as her anger left her and she returned to sadness. Sona stepped forwards to support her friend until Akeno cried out for the girl in surprise. Looking towards where she was pointing, Ria's eye widened as the pawn pieces set upon Naruto's chest glowed a bright vibrant red. Jumping to her feet in excitement, not knowing or caring how it was suddenly working, Rias wasn't about to let this second chance escape her. Summoning a magic circle around her and Naruto, she started her chant to bring her savior back to her while the other girls moved back. Akeno stopping to grab the extra evil pieces that were set down beside her king before she too stepping outside the circle to watch. Never noticing the rook piece that had rolled under the dead boy's hand. Rias closed her eyes, channeling as much magic as she could muster into her spell, her mind overflowing with hope once more. "In my name, Rias Gremory, I command you Naruto Uzumaki to walk the earth once more, return to the world as my savior and a devil, be reborn." As she said the last of the spell, she never noticed her slip in the incantation. As she started as sparks of energy started shooting between 6 of the pawns and the rook that floated up from under the boy's hand and took a spot in the middle of the hexagon shape that glowing pawns took. Black bolts of electricity chained the 7 pieces together as the slowly lowered into the whiskered blonde's chest, while small bursts of black fire sprouted from where the pieces entered his body. One larger pulse, the flames throwing the 2 unused pawns off the glowing boy's body. Flashback end. She could only stare at her last 2, now mutated pawns, something that should be impossible. Much like everything else that happened around the boy. She'd never heard of pieces mixing as they had with Naruto, he was worth more than if she had both her rooks and tried to change him. That was the reason she had called her brother, she was unsure what could happen with the different pieces, could he promote like normal pawns, was his rook abilities enhanced to a greater degree or was nothing different and the pawns simply to contain his own powers. There's nothing we can do for now other than wait but you. Rias was shaken back from her thoughts by Akeno's voice and the soft hand placed on her shoulder. Looking up at her queen, Rias could only smile softly at the comfort the black-haired girl offered. I know Akeno, it's just the impossibility of everything that happened. Yufufufu, do you mean before or after we brought him back? Akeno asked, holding a hand in front of her mouth while she giggled, which got worse when she heard Rias groan louder and drop her face into her palm. All of it, every time I think I can't be more surprised by him, he seems to do another impossible thing just to spite me. At least we know we won't be bored with him around, right? Akeno said with an impish grin. Somehow I think boredom will be the least of our worries with him around. Rias said with a bland tone. However, the small grin on her face showed that she wasn't as upset by this as she tried to make herself out to be. Come on, let's go get some sleep. Oh, Rias? Akeno spoke up as they started towards the door of the club. Seeing the other look back to her, Akeno continued, did you ever figure out what your slip up in the spell did? Her only answer was another groan, causing the ponytailed girl to laugh again. In an endless expanse of swirling colors chaotically mixing and flowing around each other. Drifting rocks, parts of ruins from castles forgotten in time or others so advanced they beyond recognition. Yet floating calmly in the middle of all this was a white marble platform holding a throne of midnight black. Sitting on this throne was a young girl dressed in a dark purple dress with white frills around the ends and tied at the waist with a light purple bow. Her knee-length black hair being held away from her silvery gray eyes by a purple bonnet, the girl was almost a definition of a gothic Lolita. Her normally apathetic dull eyes looked off in a seemingly random direction with a frightful intensity. He is awakening. She said with but a small whisper. Trying again for moving revelations. Naruto grunted in annoyance once more as he glared at the cliff face in front of him. It had been about a week since he had woken up from his death and rebirth, meaning he had only 4 more days before school started once more. He was determined to get back the 3 skills he had remembered. However, to do that he had to relearn to control his chakra. Something made that much harder as the demonic version of the energy was much more potent than what he remembered it felt like. An ironic blessing that he learned about in his meditation was that because his chakra coils and tenketsu were being rebuilt, he didn't have to deal with his massive reserves, overloading his techniques as badly. As long as he focused on control while they continued to rebuild to their original size, when they finished in a couple of months, he'd be able to learn most of the skills from his past. A half-hearted grin came to his face as he thought of that. He had a past. Everything he saw was real, the biggest clincher for that was after a rather interesting meeting inside himself. He looked in the mirror and finally realized his pupils were slitted like Kurama's had been. Closing his eyes, Naruto thought about his meeting with a rueful smile. Flashback. Boy, I wouldn't do that if I were you. A voice called out from behind him, breaking him from the feeling. Whipping himself back to the source of the voice, Naruto felt his own voice fail him as he could only stare at the other occupant of the room. Before him stood an image he saw in the mirror every morning, minus the awful orange outfit and headband the other him wore. Hoi, don't diss the orange Tebeo. Tebeo? Naruto asked his other. His headband wearing clone chuckled nervously while rubbing the back of his head. It's a verbal tick we got from our mom. Correction. One you got. The slitted-eyed blonde pointed out as he had never remembered having any verbal tics. The mental image deadpanned the cold version of himself. We're the same person, Baka. Naruto snorted while crossing his arms in front of his chest. I beg to differ, I have far better taste in clothes than you do. The blue-shirted boy smirked as his clone clenched his fist and started glaring at him while muttering team under his breath. That aside, what do I call you? If we're both Naruto it's going to get annoying to think about. The shinobi version of the blonde had to take a moment to calm himself down from the taunts at his favorite color before he spoke. Well, I always dreamed of being Hokage, so just call me that. The ninja, Naruto said, puffing his chest out with pride and a smile so large it forced his eyes closed. Sure, Ninja Gaki. Naruto said, ignoring the oi hiss from his doppelganger. So what are you? Besides the obvious. "Brrr, I can't believe I could turn out so much like the team." Ninja growled at the other him. "I'm you, well, more like who you were before Kagaya's attack." I asked for besides the obvious Kage-chan. "Boy, I'm so going to kick your ass." Ninja yelled while shaking his fist at his calmly glaring other. "Just answer the damned question, Naruto." The reincarnated blonde said forcefully, the black flames from the pits around him jumping out to form his aura, only to watch as the original blonde was covered in a cloak of red energy that reminded him of Kurama's shape but ended with three tails waving behind. "Stop being such an asshole and I will, team." The guttural sound of his voice being distorted through the energy made the ninja version of him come off as almost demonic and would have been intimidating had he not already heard Kurama speak before. Black void fire and red demon chakra clashed as they stared each other down before Naruto sighed and turned away from his ninja counterpart, allowing his aura to dissipate. "Look. I've had a long and stressful day, so if you're not going to get to the point of why you're here, just leave me be. I have enough on my plate without playing games with a mental doppelganger who thinks it is fun to taunt me with who I was." Ninja withdrew his demonic chakra while looking at his void self before groaning and rubbing his eyes with the palms of his hands. "I'm not trying to taunt you. I'm here to give you our memories. I'm just sorta stopping them from all flooding you at once." "Your conscience stopgap on my memories?" Naruto asked. "There, I guess." Ninja said, not really getting what Naruto was asking him. "I am sort of like a slow release Kage Bunshin. I release some memories every night or I can release select memories in here for you. I can tell you some things as well, but I'm not really good at explaining stuff." "The last part I gathered from what little memory slipped through and Kurama," Naruto said, causing Ninja to start muttering about teams and damned fluffies. Which the quieter of the two decided he was better off not knowing. "So you came here looking for something, what is it?" Ninja said, annoyed with his newer self. "The fox said it left me a bunch of gifts tied to its chakra. However, I have no idea what chakra is or where to find it," Naruto said, looking at the ninja. Ninja pointed to the rushing red waterfall. "That's your demonic chakra pool. The bit that's leaking out of currently remaking our chakra system that got destroyed." The orange-wearing blonde causally started walking towards his newer half. "I'll give you the memories we have of the academy over the next week, as well as tell you the basics of tree walking and water walking exercises." Finally in reach of the void Naruto, he looked him in the eye while laying a hand on his shoulder. "Heads up, this is gonna hurt." Naruto woke up sprawled out on his living room floor the next evening, having slept for a full 16 hours. Flashback end. Odds he was not kidding. Naruto thought to himself before reopening his eyes to look back at the cliff again. "Feel the energy, watch how it forms, feel how it flows through the body. Direct it to your feet, spreading it evenly and go." Naruto rushed to the natural wall once again, planting his feet as he started up it. He ran right up, stopping at the top while staying horizontal. His first real smile in a long time spread across his face while he looked out across the forested area around him. "Look out world, Uzumaki Naruto is making his comeback." Several hours later found Naruto standing outside a sweets shop, staring at the window display while being stared at by the passing populace. The reason for their stares was because while on his way back into town after his training, he had bumped into Kaneko, who had yet to stop trying to find out where he lived. If on Ria's orders or not he didn't know, so she decided to follow him. Knowing that he wasn't likely to get away from the persistent girl, Naruto chose to go to the market area of town to get something to eat. When he offered to buy her lunch as well, she grabbed his hand and started dragging him to her favorite shop. This in of itself wouldn't be so odd if he hadn't keep his feet solidly on the ground while being dragged. As such, everyone was being treated to the sight of a tall blonde being dragged by a short white-haired girl while leaving solid lines of rubber from his deteriorating shoes as they made their way to the shop. Once they arrived, Kaneko finally let go of his hand and walked inside to pick out her snack while Naruto let his feet cool down as to stop leaving marks as he walked. "Next stop is new shoes, I guess." The blonde muttered with a blank look that almost matched the loli that had beat him into the shop. People would have thought them a cute couple if not for their matching, disturbingly emotionless looks as they decided what to eat. Kaneko getting cake while Naruto stuck to some light pastries. Seeing how little he had gotten, Kaneko stared at him, silently asking about it. "It would cost too much to fill me up here, kitten." "Where next, senpai?" "New shoes." "Just shoes?" the girl asked after swallowing a bite of cake. Naruto pointed out the window of the shop to where the trails from his feet were left. "Just shoes." Kaneko looked where he was pointing before glancing down at his feet. Looking back at him, she kept her stoic gaze even as a sweat drop rolled down the back of her head. "Too slow." "No warning." Naruto countered, keeping to their ongoing short answer conversation. "Offered sweets." Could have said. By now everyone around them was starting to get really amused by their talk, most assuming they'd known each other for years to be able to understand each other with so little words. Seeing the girl start to look down with a slightly ashamed look, Naruto stared out the window towards where the clothing stores were. Wouldn't take it back. Next time say, we'll come together. Kaneko looked up sharply towards the blonde young man while he just continued to stare out the window, a look of surprise in her eyes. If not on her face. Catching Naruto's eyes, it turned to her and his almost unseen nod happiness spread through her again. Hi. The start of a blush on the young woman's face going unnoticed by almost all. Of everyone in the club, Kaneko was the biggest contradiction to interact with for him. She had felt what it's like to be empty, so she understood him and wasn't demanding for social interaction, which was something Naruto liked about her. Their short answer conversations were a norm for them, never needing more explanation and gaining more understanding from simply looking in each other's eyes than most ever could from words. However, she had made it a point that when they were together, they almost always remained in contact. Though she didn't sit on his lap in public since the first day, unless both hands were busy with something, she normally held his hand, something that, while not terrible, did make him uncomfortable by how foreign and unnatural it felt. She was at least easier to deal with than Akeno, though he was building a tolerance to her as well. Rias had made it a point to call him in to be with her peerage at least every couple of days, though Naruto was sure that if she had her way it would be every day. She was insistent they be together and used the excuse of needing to explain more about devil life to him to get him there and stay for as long as she could hold him. When asked why he was always reluctant to come and hang around them, he could only offer that he was not a social person and being around other felt uncomfortable for him. Apparently that was the wrong thing to say because now if any of the group came across him at any point during the day or night they would follow him around for hours on end. Since he didn't exactly dislike them, he couldn't just tell them to leave him alone. Kiba was by far the easiest to get along with, as once the knight knew he was versed in the art of the sword, the boy was always up for a spar. Something Naruto was happy to provide as they didn't need to talk. Once worn out from the fight, Yuto was happy to leave to rest. Though he was sure that as Yuto got stronger, the fights would take longer to wear the prince down. Rias was difficult to get a full read on. She seemed to want him there and was always happy to see him, however whenever they talked, she seemed far too chatty for his tastes most of the time. Always asking how he felt, if he was having any problems or if he needed anything. Apparently it was the king's duty to provide for his or her peerage, but as Naruto wasn't in need, she felt a slight bit put out. She still couldn't even figure out where he lived, nor could she sense him beyond his current health, and that was only at a basic level. She had restricted his learning about devil abilities or using magic until after she gave some specialist, who was coming, a chance to look over his pieces to make sure it was safe due to some compilations and his resurrection. Whom was expected within the next day or two. While he didn't mind much, as it gave him time to relearn his past self's abilities, he did feel that she was hiding something from him. Then again, he still hadn't told her about his memories, so he couldn't pry. The one that put Naruto out the most was Akeno. She was so touchy that he often couldn't help but start hiding under his mask around her. She liked to tease him and often was trying to touch him, which left him off balance, so he would fall into his mask and try to joke around, slip past her when she tried to touch him, or tease her back verbally. Some of the jokes got pretty perverted according to Kaneko. Who really didn't like perverts, but the white-hair girl let most of it slide, saying she knew he didn't mean them. Senpai. Naruto was shaken from his thoughts by the call. Oh sorry kitten. Just thinking, Sparky is supposed to let me know if the doc is coming today or tomorrow. Kaneko nodded, long used to Naruto's habit of nicknaming everyone he talked to for longer than hour. Ready? Hi. Tossing the last of his snack into his mouth, Naruto stood and held the door for his companion for the day, knowing that unless he really tried to run, he wasn't likely to lose her. The thought of being able to run jumped out of his head as the white-haired girl took hold of his hand again. I won't run. He said as she walked out with him. Not alone. So you keep saying. Until you believe. The golden eyes remained firm on reminding him. Then let's go. The slitted-eyed boy said as he led her towards the store. Truthfully, he was thankful to all of them for all they were trying to do for him. Even if it was irritating at times with the constant calls. Random meetings that he didn't for a second believe to be random. And incessant talking from some, he was starting to look forward to seeing them at times. Do you know how to play console fighting video games? Naruto asked, deciding she earned knowing where he lived. Kaneko nodded a bit before tilting her head questioningly. Hi. My guardian likes to send random gifts. Last one was a gaming console and lots of games. All of which are two-player. Naruto explained. You never play. Never had someone to play with. Naruto said, shrugging helplessly. I'll come. Thanks kitten. Naruto gave a small smile. After replacing his shoes and buying groceries, including a large amount of snacks for his company, Naruto led Kaneko to a small apartment complex near the edge of town. The complex wasn't anything top of the line, but it was both in good condition and less expensive than something closer to the main district. Kaneko realized it had fit perfectly with Naruto's hiding pattern as well, so average in appearance that it blended in with the background rather than trying to be hidden. His apartment itself was both nice and very basic. The door opened to the area between the kitchenette on the right and the dining table on the left. Beyond the table lead into the living area, which was separated from the kitchen by the counter. The living room was a simple three-seated couch set against one wall across from a 34 television on the other wall. On the stand the TV stood on was the modem for the internet, a DVD player, and the gaming console Naruto had spoken about, as well as the large stack of still sealed games. Between the couch and TV sat the coffee table, on which was two of the books she'd seen Naruto borrow from Ria's. The only object that wasn't perfectly clean and organized was the overflowing bookshelf on the far wall next to the patio door leading to the balcony. Just before the couch started and on the other side of the kitchen counter was a hallway leading into the deeper part of the apartment. Bathroom's the door at the end of the hall. Door to the left is my room, door to the right is linen closet. Naruto explained as they entered. That had been close to 4 hours ago. You suck. Naruto snorted at Kaneko's blunt assessment of his gaming abilities. As expected, you've seen how often I use this. Kaneko nodded as she had to wipe the dust off before even opening the console to use it. Tea. Please, and cookies. Kaneko said as she stood up to change games again, as they still had a large stack of untouched games to work their way through. They both stopped however when Naruto's phone started to play Thunderstruck by AC/DC. Picking up the device off the table, Naruto started for the kitchen again while answering it. Hello Sparky. He completely ignored Kaneko's deadpan stare at his ringtone for Akeno. Right, when? Naruto nodded along while his white-haired company watched him, starting to make her tea only to stop. Okay, I'll be there shortly. No, I can walk, you said I still have half an hour. You're likely to do that when I get there anyways Sparky, see you soon. Naruto hung up as he started to put the cups in the sink and put away the tea kettle. Sorry kitten, looks like Doc's coming soon so we have to head over to the clubroom. Kaneko nodded while turning off the gaming console and TV before heading to the door to get her shoes on, her blonde host following her moments after he finished his quick cleanup. The second Naruto finished locking his door, his hand was quickly captured by the lowly white-haired girl. Naruto gave her a quick look before shrugging the girl's habit off and began walking away. He pulls that shit at school, I'm hanging him from a flagpole prep, I'm just letting you know. Naruto's voice was heard from outside the door causing Rias to look up from some of the paperwork she was doing while waiting for everyone to arrive. I understand you're upset with him Naruto, but Hyoto-san and his friends are harmless. Yuto said, trying to calm his fellow blonde down as he opened the door, letting the two blondes and a disgruntled white-haired girl in. The three were almost drooling on kitten here and crowding me way to close. Naruto said back with a flat look. Feel dirty. The girl muttered standing a step closer to the larger blonde than normal. Ara, did you have an encounter with our cute little Kohai on your way over? Akeno asked from her normal position behind Rias. Kaneko gave the ponytailed girl a flat look before moving to a couch, dragging Naruto with her as she walked. Akeno gave a giggle at the look she received, while Rias could only just hold back the tick in her eyebrow at how close the two seemed, while she couldn't seem to make any headway learning about her newest club member. If you find those three cute, please never call me that, Sparky. Naruto said while he sat down and Kaneko sat on his lap. Akeno moved towards him, swaying her hips while licking her lips. Of course my sexy little ghosty kun, you are far too delicious looking to be called cute. Akeno. Ria said stopping the girl before her and Naruto could start another one of their little games. Ufifif, sorry but you. Didn't mean to make you jealous. Akeno said while moving back to behind the reed. I'm sure Red's got better tastes than that Sparky. Naruto said while trying to reach around Kaneko to get some of the tea that had been set out. Thereby completely missing all four of them giving the boy deadpan looks. Kitten, can you move a bit so I can get the tea please? Instead of getting up, Kaneko simply reached out and handed him the cup. Stay. Naruto sighed but accepted the cup. Thank you. Kaneko nodded while beginning to munch on a cookie. So Red, when's the doc supposed to show up? Suddenly, a bright silver magical circle appeared on the floor instead of a verbal answer. Oh, now. Yuto and Akeno had to hold back a bit of a snicker at Naruto's offbeat humor, while Rias just sighed realized who came with Ajuka and that she wasn't going to really like how Naruto behaved much. As the glow died down, two new people had appeared in the room. The first was a proud-looking woman in a maid uniform. Her long silver hair was tied into 4 braids, 2 in the front framing her face and 2 in the back. Her large chest made Naruto wonder if old devils had large breasts after a certain age. The second person was a rather laid-back looking man with pulled-back green hair, his body was covered in a darker green cloak with a yellow border on it, exposing his shirtless stomach and overly baggy pants of a matching green. Welcome Beelzebub-sama, Grafia-san. Ria said bowing to the man, something that everyone other than Naruto did. following her action. The man was the only to have seen Naruto didn't stand and bow. As Grafia had closed her eyes to bow to Rias. You certainly have an interesting new member to your peerage, Gremory-san. The green-haired man said as he smirked lightly while looking over Naruto. Stepping around the maid, the man calmly approached Naruto, instantly noticing the tensing muscle and sharp eyes of the boy. Greetings, I'm Ajuka Beelzebub. The man said, holding out his hand to the wary blonde. With Kaneko off his lap, Naruto stood and shook the man's hand. Only having to look up a slight amount to look the man in the eye. Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto. Nice to meet you. I take it you're the doc Red asked to look me over. Rias and Yuto both winced at Naruto's blunt reply. While Luceno covered her mouth to hold in her giggles, Kaneko just bowed her head. Grafia's eyes widened in shock at his crassness before she quickly glared at the youth. Ajuka, however, started to laugh aloud. Not quite, I'm a scientist, not a doctor. I was the person that created the evil P system, however, so I am the most experienced devil there is to assess any abnormalities with it. He explained with a friendly grin. Naruto shrugged while taking back his hand. Do what you got to do then, but mind if I ask you a question while you fiddle? Ajuka chuckled at the calm and outspoken youth, but nodded his consent while starting a spell to scan Naruto's body. Why did you set it up to make people slaw servants? Naruto corrected himself halfway through his question, missing Ria's sigh of relief. Ajuka hummed to himself while he thought of how to answer while taking in the results of the scans. That is actually a twofold answer. The first reason to the change itself, due to the often sudden change the chosen individual goes through to become a devil, the king needs to limit and regulate the influx of energies. Otherwise, the chosen being goes through a radical, uncontrolled mutation. Often leaving said being in constant pain and more often than not insane. This process is only needed until said individual has a strong enough grip on their demonic energies that they can control it completely on their own. Hence why any high-class devil, even reincarnated ones, can become kings and take on their own peerage. Ajuka explained as he started another spell over Naruto's body. Naruto nodded at the understandable and completely logical way Ajuka was explaining it. I see. Hearing Naruto reply, Ajuka nodded and continued his answer. The second reason is for integration. As reincarnated devils haven't grown up in devil society, they don't understand the rules our world is governed by. As such, they need to learn the social relations of our way of life and shouldn't be held responsible for any errors that they make dealing with our people, since they are new. Take yourself for example. Do you know who I am in the underworld? The laid-back guy that made the funky chess set and is helping Red and I cause I can't do anything normal. Naruto asked while watched the man's spell run over him again. Though I freely admit she may have told me but I forgot, it's been a hectic week. Ajuka chuckled lightly while grinning at the blonde. Grafia's glare on said blonde only getting worse as time went on, as frost started to form at her feet. Exactly my point, you've just been through a traumatic change and haven't had enough time to adjust yet. I hardly think it would be fair to you to suddenly have this happen, then be forced to deal with it on your own. Now, I'll be the first to admit the system isn't perfect and many devils take advantage of it or abuse it, but I made it to help save my people first and I'm trying to fix the problems with it still. Ah, I see. Thanks for explaining that, Doc. Naruto said while nodding his head. His eyes, however, were focused on the building frost coming from the silver-haired maid. You're quite welcome, Blondie. The green-haired man said as he stepped back from the now smirking boy. Hearing the Mayu give the boy a nickname back caused various reactions throughout the others in the room. Akeno was no longer able to hold back her giggles. Rias fell down into her chair while covering her face with her hands, unable to decide if she should be relieved that Ajuka wasn't offended by Naruto's behavior or worried that another of the great Satans acted like her brother. Yuto and Kaneko just stopped worrying and sat down to wait for the results of the tests. Grafia was the one that Naruto noticed the clearest while the frost left the floor, her glare developed a clear twitch in her eyebrow. So what's the word, Doc? The only word I have for you is odd. Ajuka shot back, causing a resounding nod from everyone that knew the boy, including Naruto himself. Yes I am, but why this time? By this point, Grafia had face-palmed while muttering about never letting the blonde meet someone. Well, all your pieces seem to be functioning, the rook being at the forefront while the pawns are working to stabilize it. Whatever your power is, it's almost too strong for the evil pieces to contain, and while you're clearly linked with Gremory-san, you aren't a devil. This caused everyone else to stare at the two in shock. How can he not be a devil if the evil pieces are inside of him? Rias asked in shock. Is this because I messed up the spell, or the mixed pieces? Blondie, could you focus on your upper back just inside your shoulder blades and imagine a set of wings opening and spreading out? Ajuka said, seemingly ignoring Rias. Naruto shrugged and did as asked. Closing his eyes, he tried to picture a set of wings. Thinking devil, he was expecting bat-like ones. The gasps of everyone in the room allowed him to realize they weren't bat-like. Opening his eyes only confirmed this. And that is why he isn't a devil, congratulations Ria's Gremory. Shooting out of Naruto's back were two large scaly reddish-black wings that reached from 6 inches above his head to 3 inches off the floor. They had thick running finger-like partitions and with dark membrane between them. At the top joint, a small silvery talon topped of the look. "You're the first devil to ever reincarnate someone into a dragon." The Mau finished, grinning like a madman. Testing his wings a few times to get a feeling for them, Naruto looked back at Rias with a questioning look. "Does that mean I don't have to hand out flyers anymore?" Everyone other than Rias, Grafia and Naruto burst out laughing as they couldn't hold it back anymore. Though Kaneko's laugh was a quiet giggle. Grafia groaned while muttering about a second coming. Naruto looked like he honestly wanting an answer, while Rias just stared blankly at the boy. At night after the meeting, Naruto had returned to the woods near where the abandoned mansion he'd been killed in was so he could train more in his ninja techniques. While his chakra system was still regrowing in size, all of his tenketsu had been fully recovered so he could practice his jutsus at least. Right now he was trying to master Kawarimi no Jutsu, substitution technique, to the point that he didn't need the hand seals to use. He had it down to 3 out of the 5 seals needed, but that would still be too slow to use in a fight for it to be of much use. Just as he was about to start warming up, something caught his attention from the corner of his eye, a flash of purple in one of the mansion's windows. Moving as quickly as he could while still being as quiet as possible, the ninja in retraining rushed up to the door of the building to track down the source of the disturbance. What he found was unexpected and upsetting. In the room he had entered through the first time he came here, balled up in several moth-eaten worn-out blankets, was the same young half-snake girl he'd noticed during that night. This time when he found her though she looked half-starved with old spoiled and moldy food remains surrounding her. She was sweating even as she shivered from chills running through her body. "Ninja, do we know any medical jutsu? She needs help." Naruto yelled out in his mind, praying the normally silent clone would hear and answer as he rushed to the ill Lamia's side. His answer wasn't in words, but rather an impulse he couldn't explain. Having nothing better to go on, the blonde bit into his thumb, drawing blood, before wiping it across one of the tribal circle tattoos on his chest. Smoke exploded out, and with it came a scroll. Following with his impulses he unrolled the scroll until he saw another circle that had anti-poison and food pills written beside it. He wiped more blood on the seal, causing it to spit out the needed medicines. Quickly pulling the anti-poison vial out, he poured it down the girl's throat, then pulled the scroll and pills away from her. In minutes, she was throwing up the contents of her stomach, proving Naruto right in that she was ill, as well as having gotten food poisoning for the large amounts of rotten food she had tried to eat. Once he was sure she had gotten everything out of her, the boy rolled up the scroll for later and packed up the medicine into his pocket. Once ready, he lifted the girl, blankets and all, into his arms, wrapping the tail around himself a couple of times so as to not step on it, holding it in place with a modified version of the tree walking technique. Secured, and in a hurry to save the girl, Naruto took off into the night, bringing home his second guest, that wasn't his uncle, ever. Once in his apartment, in which he came in through the balcony as to hide the fact that he was carrying a snake girl, Naruto had laid her out in his bed. He had to crush up the food pills and mix it into water to spoon feed it to her, but he was fairly sure with enough rest and some healthy food the girl would be able to recover in a few days. Now, just need to keep her hidden if Kaneko or Uncle Oz come over before she's gone. The blonde boy groaned. It would be just his luck that his perverted uncle would show up the same time the ill snake girl would come out of the bedroom. Shaking off the thoughts, Naruto covered the girl in a couple of blankets, as well as laying out a small space heater for the likely cold-blooded snake girl. Taking his laptop and a change of clothes, Naruto escaped the room while closing the door. The fall went well, he could get her up and healthy enough that she'd be on her way home before school started. As he laid out a blanket and spare pillow on the couch, his eyes landed out the scroll that had come from his tattoo. He hadn't even thought that they were anything more than decorative marks, though he dreamed when he was younger they were letters from parents he never had, but he never dreamed they held items from his past. Sinking down into the couch, he looked over the scroll that he had released. There were about 5 seals on it. That left 4 with things in it. Sealing ink and brushes. Spare kunai. Spare shuriken. And prank equipment. Why prank equipment? The rest sounds like emergency supplies, but pranks. Naruto thought to himself as he looked over everything in the scroll. Shaking his head at the thought, Naruto unsealed all the equipment to look over the condition and quantity he had of each, setting them all out on the table, along with the 4 pill boxes from the first seal. Everything unpacked, he started checking them. He had 50 kunai set in leather carriers that held 5 each. Most of them were still in perfect condition, however 15 or so seemed to have been used from the nicks in the blades. The shuriken were the same, with 20 being slightly used out of the 100 in the seal. They were also in leather carriers but were in sets of 10. Out of the seal for ink, he had gotten 1.5 full ink bottles and a dozen empty ones. 3 of the empty bottles were perfectly clean, while the rest were emptied of ink, while still having stains of old ink in them. The brushes looked like they needed to be cleaned, but otherwise were okay. The thing that surprised him was that a book had also been in the seal, explaining the process to make sealing ink, as well as the different type of inks there were. The prank supplies were a surprise as well, as they made a bit more sense now. They consisted of several spools of wire, smoke bombs, stink bombs, nets, spring traps and some handheld tools. Everything someone would need to make many traps and secure an area. There were also pure prank items such as paint bombs, pepper smoke and other such things, but it did make sense to have trap-making supplies in the scroll if he was a ninja before. While he already had the main portion of his memories from his academy days returned to him, many things didn't make sense yet, like why he spent so much time thinking up pranks or his desire to become Hokage. However, his earlier memories started to fill in now that he'd remembered the needed parts to train with. That was one thing about the returning memories that had given him a major headache. Everything was choppy, making it like watching dozens of clips from movie trailers and trying to put together the movie itself. Not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. He knew that his past self related with someone named Sasuke almost as well as he did with Kaneko now. However, they did not show any form of connection to each other from what he could remember. His returning memories for him youth were not pleasant whatsoever. He'd remember being thrown out on the street at the age of 5, maybe 6 years old from the orphanage and having to eat from garbage cans. Hiding from mobs of townspeople that would chase him down and beat him up till white masked people would finally step in. The only good thing that came from those memories was Naruto finally understood what Kurama had meant by the advanced healing factor, as with the older he looked during the mob scenes, the faster he would heal and more damage he could heal from. Sadly, this also meant that the damage done to him was worse as well. One memory that stood out was being impaled through the chest with a pitchfork and stuck to a wall hanging 3 feet from the ground. He believed he was 8 at the time. I am very glad I don't live there anymore. While the returning memories did make it harder still to get to sleep, it also gave him a new perspective on how he reacted to things. Not to say all the memories he gained were bad. He did remember the nice father and daughter pair that ran a ramen stand. They used to feed him happily even when he didn't have any money to pay for his meals. There was also the old man who had got him an apartment to live in when he was 9 and used to buy him ramen every once in a while. He did still love ramen today, it was his comfort food of sorts when his nightmares got too bad, but now he knew what was always missing for it, he missed the family atmosphere from the stand. Naruto shook his head to force the memories from his mind. It was good to have them, but to dwell on them wouldn't help him. Focusing again, he released the seals on both of his arms. From his left arm came a set of clothes that were black and burnt orange in color. Not as horrible as the ones he wore as a kid, the ones his doppelganger wore as if to mock him. But still an odd choice for a ninja to wear. The eye-catching piece of clothing however was the crimson long coat with black flames covering the bottom, the same type he was said to have been found in when he was a child. Looking it over, he found that his name was stitched into the collar of the along with similar circles around it, seals he now realized. However, they were different enough for the ones on his body that he was sure they weren't storage seals. Turning it over, the blonde could see the word sage written on the back in black, surrounded by a swirl mark. Just having the coat in his hands gave him a sense of familiarity and surprisingly, pride, as if the coat proved that he had accomplished something great. The other seal had released another scroll. It was larger than the first, but only had the name Jiraiya on it. Opening it, he saw several seals across it, the first of which released a stack of 12 books. The first was titled Tales of a Gutsy Ninja, something he was likely to read tonight. The rest of the books were a series of books. All but one of which with brightly colored cover, each title started with Itchy Itchy. Naruto felt a need to sweat drop simply looking at the stack. Opening the cover of one and skimming through he realized why, the books were all smut. The last of the stack was a manuscript titled Itchy Itchy. Maelstrom, the part that caught his attention was under the title was an author's note. In dedication to my godson, grow strong and live your life to the fullest. Just reading this made a tear form in Naruto's eye. He didn't know who Jiraiya was or why the man left the manuscript with him, but he would at least read through it, smut or not, this was a dead man's life work, he couldn't throw that away. Not even he was that cold. As I'm in a different dimension, maybe I should republish these in his name, it would allow him to live on in name at least. Naruto thought to himself, he could take the manuscript in first after proofreading it. If it sold, okay, then he'd type out the others to be republished. He didn't think they would sell well, as they were simply poor novels, but a little extra money for making sure someone's legacy lived on couldn't hurt, and he could reduce the amount of money he got off his uncle. Uncle Oz would likely love these books, maybe he knows where I could get them published without having to give my name. Looking at the overfilled coffee table, Naruto decided to start organizing it before he opened up any more items. He stored all the kunai and shuriken in the hallway closet until he could either store them back in the scroll or into his room, whichever came first. The brushes, he put into a glass filled with water to let the ink soak out of them, as were the empty ink vials filled with water to hopefully clean. The vials still holding ink were put near the brushes so they weren't lost. The trap-making equipment was stored in a cupboard under the sink as it wouldn't stand out, keeping all the bombs in separated Tupperware containers. The clothing was folded up and kept just off from the couch as it would be stored in this room tomorrow. Well, the sage coat was spread across the back of the couch as it would mean little if people saw it. He had stacked the books between his overfilled bookcase and the wall as he had nowhere to lay them on it. While carefully laying the manuscript on top so it wouldn't be ruined in any way. Once he was finished putting that stuff away, the events of the day started to catch up to him, causing him to finally give up on staying awake and let sleep take him before he was fully laying down on the couch. Naruto opened his eyes once more in the chamber in his mind, though he didn't need to walk through the tunnels this time as he was already standing before the glowing red waterfall of his chakra. Across from his clone. Thank you for your help, ninja. Should you really be thanking yourself? Seems kind of conceited, don't you think? The orange-wearing blonde asked, a joking grin on his face. Naruto then noticed that his clone had changed the clothing he was wearing, going from the bright orange and blue jumpsuit to a black jacket with dark orange sides and burnt orange pants. An improvement from the start, but still far too orange for the slitted-eyed boy. Considering the differences in our knowledge, I think it can be allowed. Naruto said with a calm grin on his face. Great, you go from Team Tagara. Ninja muttered, rolling his eyes at the passive boy across from him. Anyway, what can I do for you today? Other than thanking you for hearing me enough to help that girl, I was wondering about the seals on our body and what else they can do. Naruto said, completely ignoring the muttering of people he wasn't aware of. Ninja got an amused grin on his face when he heard his newer self's request. This was an area that he really loved to play in, something that connected him to both his parents. That's a loaded question, and something that I can't fully answer even with all the memories we have, we couldn't tell you everything they do. Take the seals on our chest for example, one held emergency supplies, while the other is a gravity and resistance seal for exercise. Two of the visible seals on our sage coat are wear resistance and genjutsu breaker seals. I see. Naruto said, as he could see his other self getting more excited by the word. How do you work them? Just adding chakra for most. The blood for the storage seals on you was because of how often we needed to flood our body with chakra during fights. We needed to have a way to prevent them from randomly expelling the contents. Ninja explained happily. I can start releasing some seal information if you're interested. Please do, I'm going to start needing to use the gravity seal to continue training while I'm in school. Naruto said, thinking over everything he learned while piecing together what he could in his thoughts. Ninja groaned at hearing they were in school again. I don't see how you stand that place. Naruto shrugged, I enjoy learning new things. People are still stupid but less hateful here. With that, he started to fade away from the mindscape, giving Ninja one last lazy wave as he did. Naruto was woken the following morning by someone poking him lightly in the head. A new experience to be sure. Blinking his blurry eyes, he could at most make a low grunting noise at the offender. "Ah no, who are you?" A soft quiet voice asked from the blob of pink and purple above him. Naruto grunted again while pulling himself wearily from his place of slumber, desiring nothing more than to simply roll over and go back to sleep. Groaning with a headache from just waking, the blonde rubbed his eyes before looking back at the now clearing blur. First he saw the purple and pink part slowly give way to show short messy hair and soft if slightly sunken skin, wide green eyes showing apprehension and innocence. The young snake girl had awoken and was now standing before him, wrapped up in one of the blankets he had used to cover her last night. Rudo the blonde grumbled out while standing up to head to the kitchen. Give me a minute. The young girl seemed to understand as he staggered his way from the couch and into the kitchen. She wasn't entirely certain how to act as the blonde teen barely seemed to make it to the sink before splashing cold water on his face, attempting to kickstart his brain enough to talk to her. She was very nervous not knowing what was going to happen to her, but she was hopeful as she was taken from the abandoned house she remembered passing out from pain in and was now in a clear and cared for apartment and feeling better, if still starving. Finally remembering what he was supposed to be doing and why he had a snake girl in his apartment, Naruto set about making tea and cooking some food for himself and the girl. He didn't intend to talk to her much until both had something in their stomachs and had run themselves through the shower. Sorry, I'm not a morning person. The blonde muttered loud enough that he was sure she heard him. It's okay, Naruto-sama. The girl said as politely as possible while trying not to let her stomach growl at the smell of the food being cooked. I was just wondering why I was here. It's Naruto, no honorific. The boy said, still somewhat grouchy from being woken up. We'll talk after breakfast. And shower. He grunted out while cooking a large skillet of scrambled eggs with toast, sliced tomatoes and cheese. Even as a brain-dead zombie in the morning, Naruto still knew how to cook a good filling meal. After eating and both having cleaned themselves up enough, the boy sat on the couch looking at the young, nervously fettling girl who was now wearing one of his t-shirts that was big enough to seem like a dress on her small frame. "So, what's your name?" Naruto asked, trying to get the girl to relax slightly. Hikari, Naruto-sama." The girl set her head down and hands held in front of her, looking every part the shy innocent girl he thought her to be. "Okay Hikari-chan, I'm sorry if I scared you earlier. As I said, I'm not a morning person and I had a late night so it was rough getting up." Naruto explained, the calm easygoing smile of his mask firmly in place, trying to calm the girl down. "I wouldn't have gone through the trouble of helping you if I was just going to hurt you, so you don't have to be so nervous." If you don't mind me asking, why did you help me, Naruto-sama?" The girl asked shyly, while playing with the tip of her light purple scaled tail. Naruto didn't even bat an eyelash while keeping the easygoing grin on his face. "You look sick and the moldy food around you didn't look too healthy to eat, so I decided to help." The look of shock that crossed the girl's face was enough for the blonde to let out a small laugh while nodding. "Yes, that's the only reason." A small blush crossed the girl's face as she averted her eyes. "So what do you want me to do now, Naruto-sama?" She was honestly expecting him to demand her to obey him now that he had saved her, as that was how everyone treated her since she was taken from her family. "For one, I ask that you stop calling me Sama, I'm just Naruto. Second, I want you to rest, you're likely still weak and need to recover," Naruto said while standing from the couch. "After that, we'll see what we can do to find where you belong. A cute little girl like you shouldn't be out on her own." Hikari puffed her cheeks out at being called little girl, but the blush on her face was only half from that and half from being called cute by the handsome whisker-marked blonde. Grabbing the manuscript and placing it in his school bag to carry it in, Naruto picked up his phone and started for the door. "I have some errands to run today, so please make yourself at home. Just be sure to get lots of rest." With that, Naruto was out the door, leaving that surprised and happy Lamia girl to her own devices. Once he was out the door, Naruto quickly set the gravity seal on his chest to level 2, doubling the gravity and resistance on his body, causing his normally fast walking speed to slow considerably. And a small grin to form on his face. "If I can make it through today without any trouble, I'll raise it to 3 tomorrow." The ability to train even while just walking around town caused a grin to form on the blonde's face. It took far longer than Naruto had thought to find the publishing company Azazel had directed him to, which was in Tokyo proper. With the many business people whom were going to and from work or seemingly to just be milling in the streets, it caused the boy to get lost more than once before he finally found where he was looking for. They had worked out a royalties deal in which, while not getting much money right off the bat for the book, the better it sold the more he would make in the long run. Something that Naruto was perfectly fine with as he wasn't expecting much. He had just left the building when his had gotten a call from Ria's. "Where are you?" Her voice holding both worry and annoyance. "Tokyo, why? Why are you in Tokyo?" Riaz asked, completely taken off guard by his answer. "Business meeting." "Why?" Naruto replied in a flat voice. "What sort of business?" "Red, what did you call for?" Naruto countered, ignoring her question. "Why do you have a Lamia in your apartment?" "The what now?" "Lamia, a snake humanoid youkai. Completely female race that have a human torso and a snake lower body." Riaz explained calmly, having half expected that he wouldn't know. "Oh, Hikari-chan. Found her really sick from food poisoning and malnutrition in the abandoned mansion where I was stabbed, couldn't leave her there to die, so I took her home to heal her." "Why are you in my apartment when I'm not home?" "I was coming to get you for a meeting so we could start getting you into doing your devil work," Riaz said while trying to keep how embarrassed she was about being called out on teleporting into someone else's home while they weren't there. "And you couldn't just call me because I wanted to teleport you, maybe talk for a bit." Naruto sighed as he rubbed the palm of his hand in his eye. "I'll be back in town in a couple of hours, Red. I'll call you when I get there. Be nice to Hikari, the kid seems to have had a rough go of it. How come she gets called her name and we all get random nicknames?" You could almost hear the pout in her voice from the other end of the line, causing Naruto to grin. "2 reasons. 1, she has yet to call me a ghost." Naruto laughed as he heard the red-haired girl huff. "And 2, I met her last night while I know all you well enough to not consider you strangers." That remark caused Riaz to pause. She hadn't thought the random, disrespectful and in some cases slightly demeaning nicknames they had been given were Naruto's way of showing endearment. "So what does it take to see us as friends?" "Trust." Naruto shot back without a second thought. "See you when I get back there, Red." Riaz sighed while pulling the phone away from her ear, her other hand running through her long red locks while she contemplated what to do. Sliding her phone back into the pocket of her black and red coat, she made her way back to the living room, leaving the surprisingly still sleeping Lamia in the bedroom. The knee-length maroon skirt swayed as she walked back to the couch, taking a seat to think. When she first saw someone in Naruto's bedroom, having gotten the address from her other rook, Riaz had felt a flare of jealousy. That died quickly when she saw how young and ill-looking the girl was. Taking the time to look the girl over allowed her to notice the bruises and barely healed cuts across her arms, the sunken skin around her cheekbones. And finally the long twitching purple-scaled snake tail sticking out from the bottom of the blanket. Everything was leading to one very bad conclusion, one that seemed to go very contrary to everything else she knew about the blonde boy she'd been trying to get to know better. Taking a deep breath to calm her nerves, she started to take in everything else in the room. There were many freshly laid out blankets, as well as a space heater, making the room more than comfortably warm for her and likely many other beings. Naruto included, as he was always exuding a great deal of body heat, however it made it perfect for a resting cold-blooded being. The girl seemed to have a very small smile on her lips as she snuggled into the bed, as if she was completely at ease. This indicated she was content being there, something that if she was older, would have made Riaz jealous again. Slipping out of the room into the hallway to look for the blonde, she found herself getting more annoyed that her savior seemed to let younger-looking girls closer to him than anyone else. If he didn't show such complete obliviousness towards anyone showing interest in him and nervous confusion to intimate physical contact of any sort, she would have thought him attracted to that sort of girl. When she found that the boy of her thoughts was not home, the clearly displayed books he borrowed from her showing she was in the right apartment, she started to worry something had happened to him, the weak signal that his evil pieces gave not helping her nerves at all. Worried that he wasn't in his apartment when he hadn't told any of them he was leaving, nor had any of her peerage seen him around town, Riaz quickly pulled out her cell phone and called the boy. It had taken 5 rings before he picked up, each ring increasing her worry, causing her to come off a slight bit testy when he finally answered. Now here she was sitting in the apartment she'd been searching for the better part of 3 months. One that had to be shown to a member of her peerage before they could finally locate it. Needless to say, she felt a little let down at the plainness of it. She had half expected it to be some ninja exposition for the amount of difficulty they had had looking for him. It had been a running joke among them that the boy was a ninja that was playing with them. Her inner otaku let her imagination get the better of her after that. With Ajuka showing them how Naruto's reincarnation turns him into a dragon, she started to feel true hope against Rizer. Then last night, she had dreams of him being a ninja dragon hero that came in at the last second, burning with black fire and chasing off Rizer and an army of other devils. Needless to say, she really wanted to see him today. At least she knew now that he did have a soft spot for helping those in need. Which was a nice sign given how normally emotionless he came off, often giving Kaneko a run for her money in the department. I really don't know what I'm going to do with this guy. Riaz said as she started up her teleport circle to return to her club room. He just doesn't make any sense. But that last mutter she disappeared, the sleeping Lamia in the next room, never even knowing she had been there. Naruto lazily walked into the old Kuo school building with his hands in his pants pockets. It had just over 2 hours since Riaz had called him from inside his apartment. After arriving he'd called her back, asking where she was and where she wanted to meet. Apparently after the fuss she'd made, she had gotten either lazy or bogged down with paperwork. Naruto was willing to bet that her being lazy is what had made all the paperwork to begin with, so it could really go either way. Deciding he was going to have some fun with the girl and anyone else that was waiting for him, the blonde ninja quieted his movements and quickly slipped into the room, barely making a sound as the door opened, and he slipped into the room and onto the couch beside the snacking Kaneko. But you really should have had this finished yesterday. Akeno said while she looked over the Redeed's shoulder reading the forms that her king had just finished filling out. I know Akeno, but with Beelzebub coming over and the revelations about Naruto-kun I was really distracted. Ria said trying to play off the blame. And your anime had nothing to do with your distraction. The black-haired queen questioned with a knowing grin, which only caused Riaz to blush in reply. Anyways, Naruto-kun should be here soon, so let's put that aside for now. Riaz said quickly, hoping to prevent farther embarrassment. Already here. Kaneko said after finishing her cookie off. Which Naruto noticed was one of the ones he had gotten her. Causing everyone to snap their heads in her direction. I wondered where those went. The boy said lightly while he looked at the cookies in front of his white-haired friend, a small grin on his face, letting her know that he didn't mind. Looking back at the shocked looks on Riaz and Akeno faces made his entrance worth the effort. Though Yuto didn't seem surprised at all. Hey, I made it. Riaz twitched getting over her surprise at the sneaky entrance before she too noticed Yuto's lack of surprise. Did you notice him coming in, Yuto-kun? The princely boy simple flipped to the next page of his magazine before replying no but I've simply given up caring when he is going to arrive. His voice was flat and distracted, as if the other blonde sudden arrive didn't matter. Ouch prep, so cold. Naruto stated dramatically, only to receive a poke in the ribs from Kaneko for his efforts at a joke. Though Akeno did start to giggle, while Rias lost the twitch at the light humor. Even if they all now knew he was just putting it on for their comfort, Kaneko's poke being the sign that he was faking. You scared me senseless by appearing behind me 8 times in the last 3 days. Excuse me for stopping caring, you slippery blonde bastard. Yudo said with a deadpan look in his eyes. Does that mean you don't want to spar after the meeting? Of course I do, what does that have to do with you being a sneaky pain in the ass? The knight asked, copying Naruto's innocent head tilt perfectly. Copycat. Like you're one to talk after copying my moves to use against me. Okay boys, enough. Ria said, a small smile on her face as how much more relaxed Yudo was becoming around the other blonde. Now Naruto, I called you Akeno, what are you doing? Naruto was having the exact same question running through his mind, as he not only had become a seat for Kaneko on his right side. Somehow Akeno had managed to make it around behind them to take up a seat on his left leg, draping her body along his, as if he had just become her new bed. Why, getting comfortable of course but you. The lightning user said, a playful grin on her face as a hand slowly worked its way up the boy's chest. Naruto only needed a glance to see her bedroom eyes locking with his. Causing him to forcibly suppress his blush, even if other parts were harder to suppress. The light of glee that appeared in her eyes let him know that he was caught before he could get his body back under control, and he looked away from her. Damn, this round to you tease. Naruto muttered before looking back to the redeed. Ria's eyebrow started twitching again, but she managed to take a few deep calming breaths before talking again. Akeno, please get off Naruto-kun so we can talk. Oh, and I was just starting to get comfortable but you. Akeno whined as she got up and moved over to the other couch, missing the lip thank you Naruto sent the club president. Anyways, as I was saying, I've talked with Beelzebub-sama, and despite you not having turned into a true devil, because of your registered evil pieces, you'll still be recognized as a devil. Rias explained, a small smile on her lips. Beelzebub-sama is also going to keep what you are out of the public eye, while he'll run some test on you. Nothing too invasive, mostly what you've already been through if not a more detailed scan if he needs to. As you are the first to ever have this happen to them, he wants to see how it happened. Naruto nodded while he steeped his tea. That makes some sense, don't want the public to get scared that something could go wrong for them and start killing people. Yes exactly. Ria said, as she was thinking she could use this as a surprise against Riser. As you are going to be recognized as a normal devil, you'll have to do devil jobs as well. Naruto sighed before pulling out a 1,000 yen note and passing it to Yudo, who looked smug. You won't really need them, as according to Beelzebub-sama your own magic reserves put you well above any mid-class devil here, Yudo grumbled and passed back the note, plus added another 1,000 to it. Did you two seriously bet on the outcome? Sorry Red, but he kept trying to tell me that I'd be doing requests for twice as long, because I wasn't a real devil. Naruto said while he slipped the notes in his pocket. Ria's deadpanned at the two boys, any other bets I should know about? Naruto shrugged, we have a few going, as I do with Sparky and Kitten. Honestly I think you're the only person I don't have at least one bet going with. The blonde noted, seemingly in thought, not noticing the slight dip in Ria's mood, realizing she was the odd one out in the group. Though. That is likely because we've never really challenged each other about mundane things. Pardon? Naruto scratched his head while he tried to put his thoughts to words. Well, Prep and I train and spar a lot, so what we talk about mostly revolves around that in one form or another. When we come to a disagreement, we make a bet on it. Akeno likes to tease me and joke in that fashion, so we have ongoing bet on who'll beat who, while Kitten and I made a bet on the school's reaction to her arrival. Rias, although still unhappy that she wasn't getting closer to her new rook, was intrigued by his bet with Kaneko. Oh, and what's the bet on her arrival? I'll be ignored like him. The white-haired girl said, having stopped snacking for a bit to keep up with the conversation. And I say that unless she can spell the whole school within a month she'll be as popular as you three. Naruto said while holding his tea, giving the girl on his lap a look like he'd already won the bet and was just waiting for her to admit it. Oh, and what's the winner get? Rias asked, interested in what the winners get from these bets. Anything they want as long as they put up equal value. Naruto said easily, not in the least be worried. Preppy mostly puts up money or 1 or 2 contracts he wants to get rid of. Sparky wants to bet time, like I have to follow anything she says for a day or vice versa. Kitten here and I bet paid meals for each other for whatever the other wants to eat. You'll bet anything? Ria said surprised. Almost, my necklace and a code I have are off limits as they are the only clues I have left of where I came from. Otherwise if you'll match the price I'm game. Ria started to get a wicked grin on her face as the possibilities for this started to run through her mind. However before she could make her bet Naruto cut off her thoughts. Just remember, you place whatever you want from me as a wager. I'll counter with something I think is of equal value to me before we agree on the bet. If we both don't agree on everything, no bet takes place," Naruto said, being sure that she didn't get any ideas of trying to trick him into something. Although it did stop some of her crazier ideas, Rias didn't lose her grin completely. Even if she couldn't use this to get everything she wanted from him, it would still give her plenty of ways to get to know her newest member. Shaking away the thoughts for now, as she had to really think about what she could give up if she lost. Some things she was willing to give up for something in return, but wasn't about to just let go of for nothing in return should she lose. I'll keep that in mind, but for now I wanted to let you know that you will have to hand out flyers as I explained before, and you can start learning magic now. Have you decided what type of magic you wanted to learn? Naruto sighed as he leaned back into his seat. His lolling back to stare at the ceiling. I haven't finished the books you gave me yet, been pretty busy all things considered. However, I can say I'm interested in shadow magic, ice magic and dimensional magic. Now everyone was paying Naruto close attention, as those were very difficult branches of magic. Dimensional magic was also very obscure as well. Any reason for those types, they are all very difficult to learn. Mostly supplement spells really. Naruto answered while looking back at the red-haired girl. Seeing she didn't understand, he started to elaborate. All three allow for collaboration with you four. Shadow magic allows for me to either hide myself and others in shadows or travel in them, good for sneak attacks and escapes if I need to get one of you out of a situation. Same with dimensional magic, but allows for a wider range of areas to move to, as well as more support skills to cover my growing attack abilities, never good to over-specialize. The others nodded, a little in awe at the depth he was thinking about such things, also realizing that he was right in his note about over-specialization. Ice is more for collaboration spells with Sparky, mixing lightning and ice will give stronger effects on opponents, and cover some bases I noticed she was lacking in, mostly fire-based opponents. Amazing, Ria said while she thought over what the whiskered Mark teen had said. Other than Akeno, have you thought over everybody's fighting style? Well no, I can only go on what I know and have seen, Naruto said shaking his head. Ria signaled him to continue his thoughts on the matter. Scratching his head while he thought about what he knew, he tried to explain what he knew and what he thought up. Sparky gave me a basic rundown of her abilities and fighting style after I questioned her about the fight the night I was stabbed. Which was an impressive display by the way. Rias and Akeno both flushed a little at the praise. I could see some areas for improvement, however I ended up dead in that fight, so I have no room to really talk. Naruto said with a chuckle, missing the looks everyone was giving him for his disregard for how he died. Anyway. Well, you both showed great skill in keeping opponents at bay, leading them into traps and working with others. None of you there that night showed any real skill in hand-to-hand. Sparky said you are both wizard types, meaning you focused on high-end magical attack, basically making you both glass cannons. However, as I'm sure you realize with the webs around that place, being in confined spaces is hazardous to your health in a fight. Rias winced as she remembered how close she had been to being caught by the webs and Sarists because she was only able to dodge them, not fight back. Even a small amount of hand-to-hand self-defense would have helped. My spars with Prep showed me he is speed-based fighter with a lot of skill in sword fighting. Yudo gave a small smile, but didn't let the praise get to him, as Naruto had already told him his weaknesses. As we've only had a couple of spars, I don't know many weaknesses in his style that I can point out. I do know that the glaring ones are his stamina and endurance. If he's in a drag-out fight with someone like a rook that can weather his attacks, he'd lose, or if his opponent can hit him as much as he hits them, he'd not be able to last through the damage. Pretty boy weakness that. Bite me? Yudo remarked at the shot at his looks. Sorry man, I don't swing that way. Naruto countered with a small grin, one that Yudo matched as he was glad to have another guy to joke around with. But that's about all I have so far. Naruto finished towards Rias. No advice for Kaneko? Never seen kitten fight. I can only tell so much from talking with someone. Naruto said with a shrug. That's fine, I'll have to make some time for us all to train together so that we can find ways to cover each other. I do want to see the extent of your abilities anyway. Ria said as she walked around her desk while she spoke. That can wait for a day or two however, as you still need to hand out flyers and everyone else needs to get ready to start answering requests. Fair enough. Naruto said as he poked Kaneko in the ribs until, while pouting, she got off his lap. Taking the box full of flyers that Akeno pulled from somewhere, the slitted-eyed blonde left the room, hoping to finish this quickly so that he could work on his chakra control and growth. I can't wait to use shadow clones again. This will be so much faster then. Naruto held his hand over his mouth while letting out a loud yawn, wanting nothing more than to turn around and head back to his apartment and back to bed. Not that his company on his trek to school would let him. The red-headed beauty whom was his company was far too happy walking beside him, once in a while tugging on his coat sleeve to pull him back from walking into traffic in his half-asleep state. "Honestly Naruto-kun, how did you make it to school before if you're this bad in the morning?" Riaz asked. "Don't know." Naruto muttered, while giving a half nod to an older man who was sweeping outside his family-owned cafe. "Oh, Uzumaki-san, you're early." The man said with a happy simple, not at all put off by the boy's bleary-eyed look. "Too damn early, damn school." Naruto grumbled out in reply. "Oh ho, that time of the year again I see. Nice to see a nice young lady finally saw past you bad boy attitude," the man said with a laugh. "Just hold on a second you two, I'll be right back." Before Riaz could even say anything, the man stepped back in the door calling out for someone. Naruto himself let his body lean on the guardrail for the sidewalk, trying to squint his eyes to see but keep the sun out of them. Only a few minutes later, the happy man returned with 2 travel cups and a paper bag. "Here you go, 1 large black coffee for you Naruto, and 1 cup of hot tea for your lovely girlfriend. The missus also slipped you a couple of croissants, so please enjoy." "Thanks Shido-san, but she's not my girlfriend." Naruto grunted out, taking his coffee, missing the blush on Ria's face from the man's comment and the slight disappointment at Naruto's dismissal, before the boy took a sip and started to wander back down the road. Although Naruto missed the look, the slightly older man didn't. "Don't worry about him miss, Naruto has to be one of the densest caring boys I've ever met. I'd say you'd have to hit him in the head with a sign before he'll realize someone likes him, though if you do pursue him, I wish you luck. You are likely to have a lot of competition." The man laughed again at Ria's surprised and slightly confused look. "A lot of the young women in the area have been trying to get his attention for a while now, my own daughter included. But he just continues on with whatever is going on in that head of his. Anyways, you better catch up before he gets himself lost again. I'd better let everyone know he's started school again." "Oh right, how much do I owe you for the drinks?" Riaz asked, reaching toward a bag. "On the house, Naruto's always volunteering around the community and helping us. It's the least we can do." Shido said with a smile, waving the girl off, before he laughed a bit when he saw another of the shop owners in the area pulling the dazed boy away from traffic. "Good luck getting him to class," he said with a snicker. Riaz saw what he was laughing at and sighed. "Thank you very much for the tea and breakfast Shido-san." Riaz said with a quick bow before chasing down the boy before he got too far ahead. At least she got an answer on how he made it to school alive now. The people whom he helped by volunteering helped him make it through his morning zombie-like state. Shaking away the thoughts, she caught up to the slowly awakening blonde and again started to lead him to school. "Why were you in my bed this morning again?" Naruto finally asked, his brain starting to function at last, about a block away from their school. "Oh, I had wanted to ask you something after you finished off your flyer delivery, but you had gone right home. So after Hikari-chan and I talked for a bit I just decided to pass the night there." Riaz explained with a happy sigh at the very good tea she'd been given. "That explains why my apartment not my bed. Have you ever tried sleeping next to a lamia? They get clingy and can constrict like a boa." Riaz said with a deadpan look. "I've seen her cuddling a cushion, I rather enjoy breathing." Naruto remembered one of the times he'd found the snake girl sleeping in the living room and nodded resolutely. "Fair enough. And the reason you were nude?" Riaz shrugged easily. "I don't like sleeping with clothes on, I can't get comfortable." Naruto said before finishing off his coffee. "This going to happen a lot?" "Maybe, you were very comfortable to sleep with," the redhead said with a smirk. "Why, does it bother you?" "Not overly," Naruto said, shaking his head neutrally. "Just going to have to set an earlier alarm so we can shower in the morning. Maybe make breakfast too. Hikari-chan is horrible at cooking anything but eggs." Riaz giggled a bit. After meeting the overly polite girl, she had taken a shinning to her. The lamia was shy, polite and very quiet when you first met her. However, once she was used to you she became hyper and very clumsy. She was also very eager to help out any way she could, often making a mess when she tried. After a few failed attempts at cooking she'd given up and stuck to cleaning the apartment for her Naruto-san. "At least she's a cute little Amato." Naruto just snorted. He'd been hoping she'd be on her way back to her parents by now, or at least another relative. Everyone that had family deserved to be with them if they could. However, it turned out easier said than done. The tribe she had been a part of had been attacked, the few survivors scattered. So for now Naruto just decided to let the girl stay, which made her very happy and more than a little clingy. "I'm going need a job to get a bigger place." "Looks like I won the bet," Naruto said as the gates of the school came into view. Riaz could barely contain her giggles as both of them caught view of Kaneko. The small white-haired girl was in the middle of a swarm of students, all asking her questions and commenting on her cuteness. Not even Yudo's entrance could do more than make a small dent in the crowd. "I think we may need to help her," Riaz said as she started to see the girl fidget from how nervous she was getting. Naruto thought for a minute before nodding. "Kitten, get ready for it," Naruto said in a voice only slightly louder than his normal speaking tone, not something that normal students would make note of. But Kaneko had divulged that not only did she have a great sense of smell, she also had enhanced hearing as well. The girl looked his way and nodded only slightly, knowing she was about to get her chance, but she was only going to get one. "Red, you may want to plug your ears for this." Riaz looked at the boy in confusion before trusting his advice and covering her ears when she saw the blonde pull out a small set of orbs about the size of marbles. Her eyes followed when he threw them towards the empty sports field, only for her eyes to open to their widest when on impact the orb set off a loud bang, drawing everyone in the area's attention to it. Riaz quickly swung her attention back to where Naruto had been, only to notice how both he and Kaneko had disappeared in the commotion. "Slippery blonde bastard," Riaz muttered. Having taken a page from the princely blonde's book. Then again the only person who hadn't referred to him by that title at least once was Kaneko. The white-haired girl had instead made every effort to try tracking him down, sort of like a game of hide and seek that would start at odd times. It had started the day after Naruto had started handing out flyers. Naruto had left during their meeting in the evening taking a box of flyer with him. The second he had disappeared, Kaneko was on her feet moving for the door at a fast clip, only giving the others a short "I'll find him" before disappearing after the boy. The younger Rook seemed to have made it her personal goal to find a way to track the boy, however, when they were in the meeting room, they almost always were seated with each other. They never seemed displeased with each other and even held their weird short answer conversations. As they seemed to still get along fine, Riaz didn't make a move to intervene and even found it very cute when the girl would return with a twitch in her eyebrow as she'd yet to catch him. Shaking the thoughts away, Riaz put up her practiced smile and made her way into the school to find her best friend, even if he'd left her standing alone. Naruto had spent the morning with her and walked her to school, which was a step closer to him opening up to her and the rest of her peerage. Plus, she needed to make plans to have Akeno and Yuto come to collect him so that it would be a big show, something she knew he'd hate and was revenge for leaving her standing alone outside the school. "I'm never going to underestimate perverts again," Naruto said quietly. He was currently sitting at a small cafe with Kaneko and Akeno as Riaz was called back to her family home over family matters as she had called it. As it was Saturday all of them were in their street clothes. Akeno wore a white blouse and dark blue skirt with open-toed sandals. Naruto was in a black t-shirt with red flame print on the side, blue jeans and white shoes. Kaneko was wearing a pale blue dress that had a kitten playing with a ball of yarn tastefully printed near the bottom of it, a gift Naruto himself had bought her last week. The reason for his remark was he was seated with his laptop open to his bank account. Both girls on either side of him could only nod in equal shock. It was October 9th and he had asked them both to help him find a new house to move to after the publisher had called to inform him that his first check for Ichi Ichi had come in. As they were looking, Akeno had asked what his price range was, leading to them all checking his bank account. Needless to say the amount of zeros was very enlightening to how many perverts there were out there. "Ara, Ghosty-kun, you are treating us to dinner, right?" Akeno asked, having her hand firmly on his leg. "Is Sparky, my treat. Just as long as we find a house for Hikari and I to move into, I'll buy you both anything you want for dinner," Naruto said. "How?" Kaneko asked. "You still haven't caught me. How are they connected?" "Catch me first, I'll explain everything," Naruto answered, locking eyes to the cat-themed girl, showing that he wasn't going to back down on this and that he had a reason for it. The girl stared for a little while before finally nodding her consent. "Thank you, kitten. Trust you." Naruto gave her a small smile at that before turning away. Kaneko scooted closer, allowing for her to touch him while making it look like she was looking at his computer, but as she did a light blush came to her face. The smile that was still on the blonde's face was real, his first that the girls had ever seen. And with her emotion sensing it felt like a candle was lit in a dark room, a small light that shined brightly in the darkness. Kaneko looked over to the other girl across from her, Akeno had caught the smile and was looking towards her white-haired friend to find out if he was starting his mask or not. Seeing the smaller girl's blush and nod, Akeno relaxed her grip on him but didn't remove her hand. "So what type of place are we looking for, Ghosty-kun?" Akeno questioned, pulling her ponytailed black hair over her shoulder to play with while they searched for houses in the area that were available. 2 stories, fair-sized yard, 5 bedrooms at least, decent living room and dining room. And away from the main part of town but still walking distance from school. "Oh? Why so many bedrooms?" she asked while still searching for what he described on the Relator website. "My uncle is coming up for a few weeks, so I need a room for him, plus I want to leave an open invitation for all of you to stay the night as you need," the boy explained. "Your uncle? My guardian. He's a major pervert and far too immature to be considered a father figure, but he does what he can to make sure I'm taken care of. He's also the one that provided my allowance for my apartments and school supplies." Though considering my new income I think I can tell him it's not needed anymore. Naruto explained, having to hold back his amusement at the look of disdain on Kaneko's face when he told them his uncle's perversion. Ufufuf, and why haven't you introduced us to him before now, Ghosty-kun? The black-haired girl asked with a smile that flirted between amused and intrigued. Naruto could only shrug. He visited maybe once a year at most, normally only for a day or two. If he stays for the week, as he said he would this time, it will be his longest visit since I was 11. Akeno lost her smile and turning slightly bashful with her callous comment, as he had said he lived alone before. I'm going to need to call him once we find a good place so he can sign off on it and so he has the address for where I'm moving. Don't need the idiot wandering around lost in town again. He finished getting a small giggle for the girl before she could fall into a bad mood. Yardwall. Kaneko spoke up, pulling their attention to her. Sunbathing. Akeno nodded happily while Naruto blinked in confusion. Admittedly he could understand the need for privacy for sunbathing, but why his house? He wasn't looking for a pool. Am I getting a pool? Hikari. Right. Naruto said, remembering that she would like to get outside during the day too, as the sun would help her scales. Pool later. Kaneko finished. Eh? Naruto blinked but was totally ignored by the two as they skimmed through the houses. Leaving the boy feeling as if he had just been told that he wasn't getting much choice. If they informed Hikari, she'd side with them against him. Why do I get the feeling I should get used to this? Oh, here's one. Akeno said, before Kaneko reached out and pointed to another. Oh my, look at this one. Naruto simply leaned back into his seat, drinking his coffee while he let the girls work through the choices. He couldn't keep up to them anyways, so he wasn't about to try helping till they had narrowed the choices down. He didn't really care where he ended up beyond that it covered his needs and that of those that stayed with him. 2 hours after they had started, the girls finally settled on a house that had everything they needed and wouldn't completely drain all Naruto's funds. The house was a 20-minute walk from the Kuo Academy grounds and was set into the trees enough that gave a feeling of privacy while still being able to have access to the city itself easily. The 3/4 acre grounds were surrounded by a 9-foot-high white stone wall with square pillars marking the corners and large double old oak doors for the front entrance. The house itself was built in an older traditional design, featuring rice paper doors inside and thin walls, bamboo tiled roof and Tiamat flooring. From the gate to the house was a cobblestone walking path between a zen gardens on the left and a medium-sized koi pond to the right. The main floor held the living room that could easily seat 12 people, a dining room for 10 with separate fully furnished kitchen. On the other side of the living room were a study and the main bathroom, with both a furo and a shower stall, while there was a second washroom on the second floor. There was 7 bedrooms including the master bedroom that could hold a king-size bed and desk. The backyard was the selling point for the girls. It had a rose garden across the far wall, shrubs on either side, with large walking areas made of cobblestone paths, leading to a gazebo in the center, allowing for a photogenic view to relax in until they got the pool installed. The realtor had just walked them into the back of the house and the girls turned to her and at the same time said, "We'll take it." Naruto just sighed and called Azazel to get it sent through. By this time the following day he'd own a house that was far too large for him, however at least his adoptive little sister would have room to move around and get outside now. Naruto coughed loudly as he opened the door to his apartment, receiving a cloud of smoke to the face as he did so. "Hikari, open a window." He shouted as he waved the smoke away from his face, walking in ahead of Akeno, who had followed him home carrying a takeout tray for the snake girl. "Sorry, Nai-san." The young girl shouted before rushing away to the balcony door and pulling it open. "I was trying to surprise you." The sadness in her voice could be clearly heard. "I am trying. Too hard." Naruto cut her off. "You're trying too hard, calm down Amato." His voice was relaxed and reassuring while he stepped over to the oven, turning it off and removing the burnt attempt at what he assumed was supposed to be stir-fry. Laying the whole pan in the sink and spraying some water on it, he continued. "We brought you dinner so just relax and come enjoy some sushi." "I'm sorry," Hikari said, her shoulders slumped forwards as she made her way across the floor to the table. The last month under Naruto's care had done a great deal of good for the previously sickly thin girl. She was now wearing a shirt and skirt combination that was bought for her by Riaz and picked out by Kaneko. The shirt was a midnight blue chest hugger. It also doubled as a training bra, with a second layer which looked like a loose open blouse in a matching shade. Her skirt was aquamarine and would have only reached her mid-thigh if she had legs, however with her tail, it was perfect for covering her without getting in the way. She had gained back some weight that she had lost, giving her face and arms a rounder look that was healthy for a girl her age. Akeno had cleaned up and cut her hair into a pixie cut, getting rid of the split ends that made her hair look frizzy, so it now fell into a more smooth, natural style. There's no need for you to be sorry Hikari-chan. Neither of us is upset with you." Akeno said with a pleasant smile on her face as she moved to give the young Lamia a hug. One that was quickly returned by the affectionate youth. She's right, you know. I'd only be upset if you hurt yourself doing something like this. Naruto said while he set out her dinner on a plate while getting ready to clean up her mess. Also start packing, the girls found us a house today, so we're moving out tomorrow afternoon. Hikari's head snapped up at that, a look of hope and nervousness in her eyes. Really? Yufufif, yes really Hikari-chan, we even made sure that it had a big private yard so you can go outside. Akeno said with a grin that made the snake girl smile happily. Big tub too so you can take a proper bath, though I'm going to get it expanded later on so you'll be able to stretch out, but for now you'll at least fit in it completely, unlike our shower now. Naruto explained distractedly as he scrapped the burnt food into the garbage, making note of what was lost in her attempt at cooking. He was forced to stop however when he was grabbed from behind by his overexcited little sister. Thank you Nai-san. Naruto sighed and patted her hands that were hugging his stomach, a small grin on his face. Go eat your dinner, then get packing. Akeno's taking you over there tomorrow so you can pick your room out. Master bedroom's mine though. Hi. The girl called out excitedly before rushing to the table and grabbing a few pieces of sushi, then rushing back to the bedroom to collect her clothes. Well she is certainly happy Akeno said with a giggle. And blame her, she'll finally get a room of her own, get to go outside again, and get a proper bath again. Naruto sighed as he leaned against the countertop. This place was never meant to house two people, never mind a snake person whose tail is close to 12 feet long. Plus I wasn't exactly set financially to feed two people, so it's been hard to keep up with the bills. Akeno tilted her head while she looked at the boy, not noticing the girl poking her head out the bedroom door to listen. Do you regret taking her in? She asked trying to understand what the blonde was trying to say. Not so much taking her in, rather not being able to find her family. Naruto set his head down while he tried to find the words to express himself. She deserves so much more than I can give her. That girl is so affectionate and caring. She wastes it on someone like me that can't feel anything anymore. I want her to be happy and surrounded with the same love she gives off, something I can't do. I want to love her like the brother she sees me as, but how can I if I don't know what love is? Naruto's voice was showing the frustration with himself as he tried to explain what was wrong and how much he realized was wrong with him. Akeno lightly laid one of her hands on his chest, her normal flirty attitude missing from her face as she spoke. Is it wrong to let yourself be loved like that, Naruto? We all know how you are and you admit you want to change it but don't know how, so let us show you. Let Yuto be your brother, let Hikari be your sister, let us love you until you know what it is so you can learn to love us back. Before either could say anything more, a purple bullet shot out from the living room and tackled into them both. Please let us. Please. The girl cried out, tears in her eyes soaking into the boy's shirt. Okay, you win. Naruto said while he hugged Hikari back. I still think you deserve better though. Nai-san no baka. The girl said, I don't want better, I want my Naruto Nai-san. Yufufif, I do believe you have just been told, Ghosty-kun. Akeno said while she was awkwardly stuck in the hug with the two. Quiet Ni-chan, you're ruining the moment. Hikari muttered to the black-haired girl. I wasn't the only one, it seems, Sparky. Naruto said with a chuckle, rubbing one hand up and down Hikari's back to calm her down, while the other was around Akeno to keep her from losing her balance. The next day, Naruto and Hikari had finished packing up all their belongings, both of whom really didn't have much. Naruto by choice, Hikari by lack of availability. And were teleported to their new house by Rias and Akeno. Rias had teleported into his room in the middle of the night, simply stripped and curled into him and Akeno, whom just got into bed after him and fell asleep, ignoring any questions he asked. So he'd ended up waking up just as he had the first morning of his new life, sandwiched between the two beautiful women. Now that Naruto had started getting used to waking up with Rias finding her way into his bed. Often give random excuses if asked. He'd taken to having a body pillow stored in the corner of the room for use of his now mastered Kawarimi no Jutsu. This allowed him to escape the grip of the girls and get to the kitchen and make breakfast before Hikari tried again. At seeing the house, Rias was flabbergasted at the size and that Naruto had bought it flat out, though not so surprised that it pretty much drained his account, meaning he'd be doing overtime with his devil jobs in an effort to cover his food expenses for the next month until either Azazel noticed his lack of money or his next royalty check came in. The fact that the Redeed was talking to her black-haired friend about making him buy a bed really made him worry about his future sleeping habits. He'd even told them they could have their own rooms, only to get a patronizing smile and his cheek pinched. Currently the elder girls had left to head to the clubroom, both to cover their duties and to inform Yuto of Naruto's new address, as well as the open invitation to visit and stay if needed. This left the blonde to finish unpacking what he could into the rooms. His lack of furniture was going to be overly apparent until he could collect some money, but with how well the first Itchy book did, he doubted he'd be lacking for too long. Sighing as he moved the last box of kitchenware into the kitchen, Naruto took a moment to walk out into the front yard, something that was going to be a bit of work to get back up to working standards. While the Zen garden was easy to maintain, the koi pond was going to be completely cleaned and new fish put into it, the yard walls were also going to need to be cleaned and the grass cut. Naruto pulled his shirt off, using it to wipe the sweat from his brow. While the move wasn't hard for him, he had been running around a lot in the sun and moving larger items for his sister. Finding a nice place to sit and take a break, the boy closed his eyes to enjoy the gentle breeze. But this is supposed to be the church. A voice quietly sounded out from the front doorway of the yard. Naruto opened his eyes to look at the source and blinked in surprise. The voice came from a young blonde-haired girl that was dressed like a nun. Her head was covered in a white veil with blue trim, while her body was covered in a black robe with a silver cross, clasping the neck part closed. Hi. The whiskered-haired blonde asked as he approached the girl, noticing that she was dragging a suitcase that was barely held close behind her and held a map in her left hand. The yelped in shock at Naruto seemingly appearing in front of her, which made the blonde boy grin a little as he found her flustered expression cute. Before either to say any more, a shout came from inside. "Nai-san, is everything OAHHH?" Followed by a loud crash and the sound of breaking glass. Naruto took off towards the house without even looking back, as the unknown nun followed only steps behind him. The scene that the young nun came into was an odd sight to behold. At the base of a stairwell, laid out in the arms of the blonde boy that scared her before, was a snake girl. Around her was what looked to be a broken vase, shards of which were spread across the floor. The girl was having her hands examined by the boy as if her being half snake was normal, then she saw what he was looking at that had the snake girl in tears. A larger shard of the vase had punctured her hand completely. "Damn it, Hikari, this is why I warned you to slow down," Naruto said as he looked over her hand. "I'm sorry Nai-san, sniff, I didn't see the vase," and her excuse was cut off by the boy lightly flicking her head. "Nai-san. The vase can be replaced, you can't. So slow down," Naruto said while carefully getting her up and brushing the glass shards away from them. "Come on, we need to get this cleaned up and." Naruto was cut off from talking when the nun from outside approached them. "Oh no, I can help," she said shyly, causing both to look at her. While she seemed nervous, she didn't come off as fearful. "Excuse me?" Naruto asked. Instead of answering right away, the girl closed her eyes and 2 rings appeared on her hands. Seconds later, a green glow covered both her hands and Hikari's. The light seeped from the nun's hands and started pushing the glass from Hikari's hand, painlessly healing her wounds. 30 seconds after she started, Hikari was completely healed and could only stare at her hand in shock. Thank you," the snake girl said just as nervously as the nun had at first. Naruto looked back and forth between the 2 nervous teens and could only sigh as they stuttered at each other. Taking a breath, he cleared his throat to get both of their attention. "I thank you, miss, for healing my clumsy little sister's wound. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and this is Uzumaki Hikari, welcome to our home." He finished with as warm a smile as he could drudge up. The smile seemed to work as the nun smiled and blushed before answering. Pleased to meet you, how do you say your names again?" Naruto smiled while Hikari giggled lightly at the other girl. "Family name first, given name last," Naruto explained easily. "Oh." The blonde girl chirped, "Sorry, my Japanese isn't very good, but my name is Argento Asia. Thank you for welcoming me." What if Naruto was Youkai High School DxD? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.